Ci siamo. Dai, 10 minuti e vediamo cosa ci propone questa live. Come non iniziare con, cari esiliati, benvenuti in questa nuova live. In teoria c'è un sacco di cosine da vedere, un po' di prediction fatte, un po' di cose in generale sui rework delle Ascendancy, le nuove Ascendancy, la nuova classe, la Huntress. Quindi come abbiamo visto, insomma, le ultime news che ci hanno dato, eh, probabili nerf, ci sono poi per gli amanti dei minion queste leaks, insomma, che abbiamo visto praticamente dalla patch che è stata, insomma, sono state estrapolate questi dati come appunto il Demon Magus, che tra l'altro questo sarebbe veramente una grande aggiunta, sicuramente da ricraftarselo tutto, e anche il companion. Vediamo un po' cosa ci tirano fuori a questo punto. Un altro potrebbe essere i minion recall skill, o comunque il rework del resummon, che anche adesso insomma non è che sia il massimo. Poi ad esempio il rework dell'Atlas, delle passive per fare le mappe, quindi le Waystone, possibile rework del passive tree, delle skill, diciamo, dei vari personaggi, un rework dei charms, delle pozioni, una possibile abilità per fare lo spawn dei corpi, quindi anche quella manca ad esempio in questo momento in Path of Exile in generale. E una cosa che mi aspetterei io sinceramente molto interessante sarebbe l'introduzione dell'import-export in Path of Build, perché a quel punto si potrebbe andare effettivamente a fare delle guide, delle build, insomma, fatte meglio, insomma, studiate meglio. Chiaramente aspettiamoci anche dei fix, dei nerf, cose un po' appunto ecco particolari anche sul controllo diciamo delle classi in generale, perché c'era tante interazioni non volute o comunque abbastanza strane, mm, quindi insomma ecco anche lì vediamo ad esempio tutte le build stat stacker, o ad esempio un'altra cosa che io mi aspetterei è il rework dell'Ascendancy dell'Infernal, che probabilmente è un po' troppo forte, ecco, diciamo, un pochino troppo insomma, forte al momento, e quindi dobbiamo un po' vedere che succede, però insomma, tante novità sicuramente. Addirittura si vocifera che ci sia l'aggiunta di tutte le Ascendancy, quindi quelle che mancano, insomma, dei vari personaggi che già abbiamo, In più ovviamente l'Ascendancy anche della Huntress nuova, che però dovrebbe essere appunto una classe a parte in generale. E poi a quel punto si potrà cominciare con i vari theory crafting delle build. Mm. Dovesse uscire ad esempio questo Demon Magus o gli Spettri in generale, ci potrebbe essere anche un tentativo di fare ad esempio una Blood Mage. Quindi con il Demon Magus che casta ad esempio le curse o le buff o ad esempio l'Orb of Winter oppure addirittura altre minion skill come Unearth o cose simili. Anche quello potrebbe essere una cosa piuttosto interessante. Ora sono mesi che aspettiamo questa patch. Vediamo cosa hanno cucinato. Altra cosa che abbiamo visto, ad esempio, la vedevamo nel Discord dei Dungeon Riders, che effettivamente nei data leaks, appunto, che sono stati estrapolati dall'aggiornamento, ci sono anche dei file nominati Blight. Quindi è molto, molto probabile che sia introdotta anche la meccanica di Blight, appunto, quindi da Path of Exile 1 che prevedeva l'NPC Cassia e fondamentalmente è il tower defense e quindi anche di conseguenza l'introduzione di currency tipo Yoli. E a quel punto potrebbe essere addirittura che venga introdotto proprio il corrupted crafting, quindi la possibilità di andare a craftare direttamente gli oggetti corrotti che per il momento non sono, diciamo, modificabili. Quindi una volta fatta la corruzione, quello rimane, di fatto. Intanto per GGG 80.000 spettatori su Twitch e contando che tantissimi altri ci stanno seguendo da altri streamer, quindi insomma si dovrebbe arrivare oltre 100.000, che sono un bel po'. Grande Storm. Dai ragazzi, dai, ci siamo. Vediamo che ci imbastisca. Ora sicuramente in vero stile GGG gli crasherà tutto. Ricordiamoci l'altra volta era crashato tutto quasi all'inizio della live. Sicuramente ci sarà un bel po' da lavorare dopo queste live. E si ricorda anche, è stato detto, che praticamente le patch notice che dovevano essere rilasciate subito dopo questa live stream o comunque nelle ore successive non verranno rilasciate, ovviamente, ma ci potremo mettere le mani la prossima settimana. Detto questo, 2, 1.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Rogers, Game Director on Path of Exile 2. Welcome to GGG Live. Well, it's been a little over 3 months since we launched Early Access, so it's about time for our first major content update. Today, we're going to show you an exclusive reveal of Path of Exile 2, Dawn of the Hunt, which launches on April 4th. Twitch drops are enabled on today's livestream, so make sure you follow the instructions below in order to claim your Executioner's Guillotine finisher effect. Now in today's stream, we're going to take you on a deep dive into the new Dawn of the Hunt update. We'll cover a new class, 5 new Ascendancy classes, and huge expansions on character systems like unique items and support gems. After that, it's on to the in-game improvements, including changes to systems, a bunch of new encounters, and lots of other content.
Ok, nuova classe,
We're
nuova
going to finish up today with a
Ascendancy,
live Q&A session where Ziggy D will ask Path of Exile 2's game
nuova
directors,
Ascendancy for
myself and Mark,
existing
your questions from
classes,
Twitch
quindi
chat.
sono più
Now we have a
di
lot to
una.
cover today, so let's get started with a trailer for Path of Exile 2, Dawn of the Hunt.
Più di una.
We as Mary are guided by the Spirit. It provides prey, shelter, even love.
Più di una.
But for me, one day, all that were changed. The Spirit, it showed me something. Something forbidden. And to defend all I loved, I used it.
Pelantres.
I lost everything that day. But fate weren't finished with me yet. I'll right the wrongs I've done. I'll do what I must, no matter the cost. I will hear the Spirit once more.
Rogue Exile, ok. Nuova meccanica. 100 più. Wow. Ho visto roba interessante, negromante. Enorme, ok. È enorme, ragazzi, è enorme, enorme. È enorme.
Now, as you can see, in Dawn of the Hunt, we're introducing the first new class since early access to POE2, the Huntress. The Huntress is a spear-wielding Asmeri warrior. Born into a society with strict traditions, she was exiled from her homeland after using the power of a skill gem to defend her village. As a dexterous spear user, she specializes in both melee and ranged combat, dashing into and out of battle. Spears have extended range and a short dash, but unlike other melee weapons, you can also throw them. In order to make a hybrid ranged and melee character work, we had to do a lot of thinking about ways to make it fun to both enter and exit melee range. The first skill you will get as a Huntress is Whirling Slash. As well as striking in a circle around you, this skill creates a whirlwind that blinds your enemies. Leaving the whirlwind will make it explode. The more whirling slash is used, the bigger the whirlwind, and the bigger the explosion. Once you're out of there, you'll want to follow up with something ranged. Whip your spear around to shoot twisters towards your foes. These twisters bounce off walls and can hit enemies multiple times. You can also throw twisters inside a whirlwind to shoot out extra tornadoes that do way more damage. In her offhand, the Huntress will usually want to hold a
mix
buckler,
tra
which allows you to do a new
melee,
skill, parry.
caster.
While holding down parry, your character will counterattack any incoming attack from monsters near you, stunning them. In addition, the monsters will take extra attack damage from your follow-up strike. Some specific skills are designed to be used after a parry and have extra effects. Disengage is a skill that does a quick jump back, damaging enemies in front of you, and it can be used to interrupt other actions, like dodge roll.
Potrebbe essere,
If you
sì.
use it against a parried enemy, though,
A
it causes an
whirlwind, sì,
explosion and
potrebbe.
gives you a frenzy charge. Just be careful. If you parry too much, you're going to get stunned and possibly killed. You
Ok.
can combine this combo with whirling slash.
Il blocco ha
Slash, parry,
un threshold,
disengage, and
chiaramente.
you'll get an explosion from the disengage and the whirling slash.
Ha un threshold, quindi
The Huntress
non
also
è
has a variety
infinito.
of elemental
ovviamente.
spear throw attacks. You could use lightning spear to bounce lightning between your foes. Or you could throw explosive spears into the ground. These spears take a while to detonate, but when they do, they'll incinerate anyone caught in the blast. All spear throws on the Huntress can also be empowered by frenzy charges. For example,
Sì, è un
explosive spears will do
ibrido
an even larger
praticamente
explosion
tra
when they fire on the
warrior,
ground. And these
spellcaster
empowered versions can activate even
e
more
anche un
combos.
po' il ranger, sembrerebbe.
Using whirling slash over ground fire will suck it into the whirlwind, adding fire to the explosion. Using twisters inside a fire whirlwind will shoot out fire tornadoes as well. And you can do similar combos with ice and lightning too. Now, a key aspect of hunting is exhausting your foes by causing blood loss. This skill is Rake, which dashes towards your target and unleashes a deadly slash,
Bloodlust.
opening up wounds on your enemies. Follow up with disengage and watch them bleed out as they run towards you. On the health bar of monsters, you can see how much blood loss the enemy has experienced, and the Huntress has skills to take advantage of this. For example, using Blood Hunt will thrust forward and cause a bloody explosion. The more blood loss, the bigger the explosion. If you want to cause bigger bleeds, try out Rapid Assault. The final hit of this multi-hit combo will stick a spear into your enemy for a big bleed. Now,
Sì,
explosive
bisogna
spear and
ricordare, hanno
rapid
detto
assault both result
100
in leaving
nuovi
spears
supporti.
behind, either in the ground or in enemies.
100 nuovi
But there are other
supporgenti.
skills that leave spears around too, like Storm Lance, that leaves an electrical spear that arcs towards enemies. But what can
Un
you do
gioco
with all these
nuovo,
spears?
praticamente.
Detonate them, of course. Thunderous Leap will allow you to jump onto and explode any spears either in the ground or in your enemies. Now, as well as hunting animals, the Huntress also has the ability to work with them. While fighting any beast, you have the ability to tame it and use it as a companion. You can only have one companion at a time, but it will keep the mods that were on it. Try to find a good mods to take full advantage of your ability to tame them.
Mamma mia, pazzesco. Grande Marino.
Now, this is just the beginning of the Huntress. We've really tried to make the hybrid range of this class by having a huge amount of synergy between ranged and melee options. There are
No
22
vabbè,
new
il
skills
companion
available to By
pazzesco.
in-game, you'll be slinging hundreds of
Cioè.
insanely powerful spears, sending forth
Yeah.
spirit animals and summoning the might of Solaris from the
Companion
sky.
pazzesco.
But we still haven't talked about Ascendancy classes yet. What can the Huntress ascend into? Well, the first Ascension class you could choose is the Ritualist. The Ritualist has embraced the darker side of his merry traditions by harnessing the power of
Ascendancy
animal sacrifice
dell'Huntress.
and plague.
Sono 3, chiaramente.
The Corrupted Life Force skill causes all enemies around you to grow volatile blood boils on their skin. When those enemies are slain, the boils will burst, spreading corrupted blood to all enemies around them. The Ritualist also excels in taking advantage of magical trinkets. The Unfurled Finger skill allows you to equip an additional ring on a finger around your neck.
Una grande
Taking
classe,
Mystic
più uno
Attunement
ring
increases
slot,
the bonuses of
follia.
all the rings and amulets you have equipped. Now, this is one of my favorites. As the Whispers Ask grants you a new skill, Ritual Sacrifice. Use the skill on the corpses of slain rare monsters to absorb the power in their blood, to give you one of their modifiers for a short time.
Questo
specialize
praticamente è
further
la
into ritualistic
skill
sacrifice
della,
as the Whispers demand,
della belt
which
ed
allows you to
Hunt,
perform that skill on
quindi
yourself instead of a corpse. Cut
ruba
your own
diciamo
hand,
un'abilità,
sacrificing some of your own
un'elite
blood to
per
empower
un
yourself.
periodo di tempo.
The Amazon Ascension is for those looking to hunt more than just beasts.
La mazza.
Trained as an elite guard to the most important Asmeri elders, the Amazon will use more traditional fighting techniques mastered to perfection. The Predatory Instinct skill will cause you to reveal weaknesses in the defenses of rare and unique enemies, causing you to deal more damage. You can see those weak spots represented on their life bars. While using Elemental Infusion, any charges you consume will
Già si
infuse your
vede
weapon with elemental
dalle
power, causing any
varie
projectile attacks to
ambientazioni che
explode
ci
on
stanno
impact.
facendo vedere, c'è un sacco di
The
mappe
critical
nuove.
strike skill is as simple as it sounds. It takes your excess accuracy and gives it to you as critical strike chance. Additionally, you have skills like Mystic Harvest, which allows your elemental damage to
Bella
reach life,
questa. Questa è
and
una bella
Asmeri Brew
scena.
to be able to use either flask to restore both life and mana. So those are the two new ascendancies
Sì,
for the
tre anelli o
Huntress, but
l'ingenuity,
those are not the
esatto.
only ascendancies in Dawn of the Hunt. We've added a new ascension class for 3 of the other existing classes too. First up, for our warriors out there, we have
Eccoci,
the Smith of
guerriero.
Kitava. The warrior is a blacksmith in origin, taught by his father Renly. With this ascension, you can take your smithing skills to new heights by embracing power from the insatiable one himself, Kitava. Smiths of Kitava are master blacksmiths and have the ability to forge their weapon, quite literally.
No, ma che dici?
Using the Against the Anvil notable skill, you can enhance your weapon with fiery destruction before any battle. After doing so, your attacks will release explosions on hit for maximum devastation. You can also use the power of Kitava to summon an animated copy of your weapon to fight alongside you. A great blacksmith can do more than just forging their weapon though. Their armor can be enhanced too. Now you might think this Ascendancy class tree looks a little abnormal, and you're right. There's a lot of notable skills all disconnected at the bottom there. By taking this point here, which is free to assign, your character is unable to equip body armors with mods of any kind. So your body armor must be normal. Sounds like a downside, right?
Vabbè.
Except now in true
Questo è
blacksmith fashion, you get
bellissimo.
to craft your
Questo è
own body armor by
bellissimo.
taking those disconnected notables with your points. If you want your body armor to grant life, take this notable. If you want resistances, take this one. There's so many choices. Think of it like you're crafting
Questo
your
è
own
bello
body armor,
veramente.
just in a more literal sense. Now, let's move on to those who prefer the reassuring feel of a crossbow in their hands, the Mercenary. Alongside the existing Ascension classes, the Gemling Legionnaire and the Witch Hunter,
Mamma mia,
you can
siamo
now
ai
play as
primi
the
3-4
Tactician.
minuti, c'è già
The
un
Tactician
mondo
is a
di
former
cose.
Blackguard elite. Free from the duties of a Blackguard, he is able to use his training to decimate the monsters of Rayclast and earn a healthy income doing so.
Ok,
This training comes in the form of various skills like
altra
suppressing
Ascendancy,
fire,
Blackguard.
which causes all projectiles to pin enemies. When combined with the right where we want them notable, your pin not only stops your enemies from moving, but stops them from performing actions too, similar to freeze. With a soldier's training, the Tactician also works well cooperatively. Using the whoever pays best notable, you can place multiple banners at once. The Watch How We Do It skill gives a portion of your weapon's damage to your allies as well. But if that isn't enough, you can also command your army of off-screen archers to unleash hell and carpet an entire area with arrows. Finally, Witch players will be able to join their legions by becoming undead themselves. In Dawn of the Hunt, we're introducing the Lich Ascension class. The Lich is a master of chaos and curses and could sacrifice her life to enhance her energy shield. The Crystalline Phylactery skill allows you to nominate a jewel in which to contain part of your soul, massively increasing its power. There's just one downside to splitting your soul this way though. If you have no energy shield, your mana costs will shoot up. The Necromantic Conduit skill causes you and allies in your presence to have
Ai ai ai, Anoli Might, ok, siamo nell'Ascendancy tipo Path of Exile 1, quindi tutta minion.
Dominion over Flesh allows you to apply an additional curse.
Bella questa. Praticamente le curse possono anche colpire i nemici che hanno Exprop, cioè quindi immuni alle curse.
So Dawn of the Hunt has the Huntress and 5 new Ascension classes, but it doesn't end there. Let's take a look at some of the new skills we've added. Now you may remember we've previously talked about the Raised Spectre skill. It's finally complete, and it will be made available in the upcoming expansion. It can be found in the Occult skills on the Skill Gem crafting.
Bind Spectre.
Raised Spectre is a skill that allows you to trap the soul of almost any monster in the game, which you can then summon in the skill panel. Spectres cost spirit and will revive automatically if they die, but the spirit cost varies based on the power of the monster. You could summon an army of weaker monsters, or a few of the more powerful monsters. You can combine them with your existing skeleton minions, or summon exclusively spectres. It's all up to you and how you want to customize your army of the undead. Given that there are hundreds upon hundreds of monster variants in Path of Exile 2, it's safe to say you'll be experimenting with this one for a while.
Cioè
We look forward to
tutti
seeing
puoi
which
fare.
monsters serve you best. Now let's move on to our next skill. Since we've been talking about summoning undead so much, let's have a change of pace and summon something a little more alive. In Dawn of the Hunt, we're adding the Summon Rower skill.
No.
Summon your friendly rower to aid you in combat as a minion. You can also mount your rower in combat at any time, allowing you to move at full
Ma
speed
che
even
dici?
while shooting arrows or throwing spears. Be wary though, if you take too much damage while riding your mount, you can be knocked off and get overwhelmed. It's worth keeping an eye on your stagger bar, as falling off the mount can mean almost certain death. On the topic of new ways to enhance your character, let's talk about support gems. Support gems are used to modify your skill gems in meaningful and interesting
Ok,
ways.
le work di support.
Currently, we feel that a lot of builds have insufficient options here. To alleviate this, we're adding over 100 new support gems. Hema crystals will enable a new kind of bleed build, turning the damage over time you would have done into explosive Vile crystals.
100 supporti in più. 100
Alignment is a
supporti
support gem for
in
bow
più.
attacks, which can reward skilled players with good positional skills. Caltrops will allow you to litter the battlefield with hazards, slowing your foes as you fling spears through their ranks. But there's plenty more for every playstyle, such as Enormity,
No,
Unsteady
vabbè,
tempo.
ragazzi. Enorme. Questa faccia è enorme.
Retaliate, Syzygy. Yep, that's a real word. And many more.
Madonna.
Now, we've talked about a new class, new Ascendancy classes, new skills, and new support gems. But let's not forget about the core of a true action RPG, the items. To start with, let's talk about uniques. We're adding over 100 new unique items.
100 uniques.
This time, we've
Madonna,
made sure
altri
to add
100
uniques with focus on mid
unici.
and end-game tiers to make sure there are more exciting items to find for higher-level characters. Let's look at some examples. Embrace your inner devil with Chernobog's Pillar. It grants you a large amount of fire damage
Bello
based on your
questo,
block
anche
checks.
la visual, con le
The
candele.
Coming Calamity allows you to become a true master of the elements,
Coming Calamity
granting you
è
all
ripreso
three elemental herald
dall'1.
skills without costing any spirit.
No, beh,
At
bello.
the same
Sì.
time, it penalizes enemy resistances. Wastegate is a belt useful for builds using a single resource like Blood Magic or Archmage builds. With this belt, you can use 2 life flasks or 2 mana flasks.
Questa
It's
è
up to
bella,
you.
anche questa è
Now, we
interessante.
could go through these all day, but we'll leave most of them for you to discover. Suffice to say, though, we want there to be way more cool things to find. Over time, our goal is to add a unique to every single base item type at a minimum, so that you can chance any base in the game. Now, given that we have the Huntress, we have a set of unique spears from early game all the way through the end game as well. One example is Cypher's
Quelle le
Spear,
lance,
which combines
quindi
bleed and fire in a powerful way.
nuovo item
It allows
base.
your ignites to be
E
aggravated,
questo
dealing
è un
substantially more
unique
damage.
anche.
We're also introducing a suite of unique bucklers with some interesting parry mechanics. Calgyra's
Infinite
Arc, for
projectile
example, allows you to
parry
parry
range.
projectiles from any distance. And we're also adding our first unique charms.
Uh,
Bayra's Anguish will not only protect you from Ignite, but will also emit a devastating fire nova whenever you do get ignited. In sum, there's just a ton of new
unique
uniques to
charm
find.
anche.
We can't wait to see the weird and broken builds that come out of it. Now, we also want to talk about crafting options. In each major update during early access, we'll be continuing to
Crafting,
add and
già
improve the
vediamo
options
cose
here.
nuove,
We have
quelle
various
le
new
due in
crafting tools
basso,
that have been added as rewards to
quella
many of the
con
different
le
types of
due
new content that we're
teste blu.
adding. But for now, I just want to mention the changes to runes. Runes add commonly available mods, but
Nuove
since they
rune.
only have one tier, flat damage mods tend to get outclassed by in-game. So we've changed runes to have multiple tiers, allowing you to get higher
Le
tier mods than
greater
before.
runic.
Our plan is to significantly expand the number of more specialized mods for crafting using socketables as we add new content over time.
Mamma
And the
mia.
first new
Bello.
set of those comes from what we're talking about next. In Dawn of the Hunt, we're adding Asmerian Wisps, which can be found throughout both the campaign and the endgame. The Asmeri spirit has made itself present in Rayclast, and it appears to be trying to warn, or maybe prepare us for the coming darkness. You will first encounter a manifestation of it in the Grellwood in Act
I
1,
Wisp,
where you'll meet
quanta roba.
Delwyn, and his merry hunter who is trying to find out what exactly is causing the spirit to behave this way. As you approach the Wisp, it will flee, leading you past monsters. Any monsters it comes into contact with are infused by it, making them more powerful. Each spirit is associated with a specific revered animal within his merry culture. This one is a Wisp of the Great Bear, and grants enemies extra life and stun. The Wisp moves faster the closer you are, and as you move away, they slow down to wait for you. But if you get too far away for too long, they'll dissipate and return to the woods. As you continue to chase the Wisp, it will find and possess a rare or unique monster, granting it a new powerful ability. Because this was a Wisp of the Great Bear, this monster now also has increased life and stun. But on top of that, it will periodically summon a large spectral bear that slams with wild fury. If you're able to defeat this foe, you will be
Quindi
rewarded.
nuova
Each
meccanica
monster that was
endgame,
infused and killed along the way,
ripresa
the rewards
dall'1
will be
sempre,
increased.
quindi
Each
appunto
wisp has
questi
its own
wisp vanno a
mechanics.
potenziare
The
i
Wisp of the
nemici
Winter Owl is a
e
primal
chiaramente
wisp that causes
potenziano
enemies
anche
to deal
il drop.
extra cold damage, gain energy shield, and release wind vortices on death. When infusing a monster, they will call down large tornadoes to protect their host. The Wisp of the Wild Cat is a vivid wisp that causes affected monsters to deal more critical strikes and become more evasive. When it infuses a monster, it will summon a barrage
Ci sono
of feline
varie
spirits that will
tipologie di
attempt to tear you
wisp.
limb from limb. Limb from limb. If you're lucky, you may even find sacred wisps that can do some pretty crazy things to the monsters they influence. Like the Wisp of the Cunning Fox, which turns normal monsters into magics, magic monsters into rares, and rare monsters into actual bosses.
Cos'è tostissimo?
As Marian Wisps can drop a new set of socketable items that allow you to craft a wide range of interesting new mods onto your items. Each one may only be used on a specific item slot. As mentioned, the Asmerian Wisps can be encountered throughout the game, but there's also a new endgame map called the Asmeri Ranges, a mountain village where the Asmeri once lived, now overrun with corrupt monsters. This map always has multiple Asmerian Wisps in it, and familiar, yet not quite the same boss fight. Asmerian Wisps can also be further modified by the endgame Atlas tree as well, and by tablets. But I'm not going to be the one talking about those things. In order to cover all the new content in in-game, I'm going to hand things over to Mark.
Hi, I'm Mark Roberts, Game
Ecco.
Director on Path of Exile 2. There's a ton to talk about with the endgame today, so let's dig right in. Path of Exile 2's early access began with a brand new endgame, and it was clear that it needed a lot of work. After absorbing your feedback, we're ready to make some epic changes. The first thing is, we just need a lot more content. In Dawn of the Hunt, we have made sure to focus on increasing the sheer number of interesting and different encounters you will randomly stumble into as you explore the endgame. And the second goal is to smoothen the progression through maps and reduce the amount of annoying busy work. To start with, let's talk about the new interesting stuff to find. Well, the most obvious thing to add are new maps. As well as the Asmeri Ranges that Jonathan mentioned earlier, Dawn of the
Nice.
Hunt also
Nuove
contains
mappe.
7
Sì,
other new
tante.
maps, all with their own custom encounters. Let's
Tante
start with this
tipologie.
one.
The Feral Megaliths map starts off in the wild Ezomite forests. As you progress through the forest, you will find mysterious rune-carved stones that, when touched, surge with energy. After activating all the stones, you can find a grand henge, where all the energy is coalescing. You can then start an encounter. The area darkens, a storm moves in, and a concentration of energy summons a dangerous boss. You must
Ok,
fight
quindi
and
altre
defeat the boss to get its
meccaniche.
rewards. Once you have defeated it, summon another. And another. And another. And another.
Ah, ok,
You have
questo
10
vabbè.
total waves of boss fights which get incrementally more difficult. If you manage to defeat them, you get full boss rewards, but also opportunities to get new runes. These can only be
Un
obtained from
farming
this
di
map.
boss praticamente.
The Fractured Lake contains a surreal waterscape with fractured mirror-like objects. As you move around the map, the terrain itself elevates from below, creating the ground you walk on. In this unique map, all the rare
Bello
monsters
da
are
vedere, un
mirrored,
po'
so you are
strano.
always fighting 2 of the same rare at the same time, which can prove quite difficult. If you manage to overcome that challenge and make it to the end of the map, you'll be presented with a broken mirror, a powerful altar-like object that contains an item within it.
Più 3
The item
mio
contained
schifo.
within is a new base type, either an amulet or a ring that can be crafted to have additional prefixes or suffixes at the cost of the other. The last unique map we'll show today is one based around the essence mechanic. You enter a crystalline cavern, and you will find a powerful map boss imprisoned in the center. It is surrounded by many rare monsters, also imprisoned in essences. By freeing and defeating the rare monsters, the essence they held will be upgraded to a greater essence, and be
Ecco le
added to the
baliste,
imprisoned map boss.
token, tipo token.
How brave are you? How many essences will you add to the boss? Overdo it, and you might lose everything. Underdo it, and you might regret it. It's your choice.
Ah, ok. Qui si può potenziare praticamente il boss delle essenze, sbloccandone, diciamo, tra virgolette, quante ne vogliamo. Vediamo qui già le flasche ibride, quindi probabilmente pozioni di mana e cura insieme. Ma si può addirittura potenziare le essenze.
Well, it can upgrade those too. We have 4 new corrupted essences. Essence of Hysteria, Delirium, Horror, and Insanity.
Mamma mia, quante ce ne sono.
Each corrupted essence has its own
Con queste chiaramente si va a potenziare quelle meccaniche, insieme con il boss, poi il boss che ne va a spawnare, insomma, quindi lo siamo noi.
Each of these has their own crafting outcomes. The essence of Insanity can be applied to a belt. It
Questi
adds a
possono
mod
anche
that will ensure
utilizzare
the
nel
next
craft.
file orb used on the belt will guarantee adding 2 enchantments.
It's worth noting all the essences in the unique map can also be corrupted too, if you're willing to risk it. It's worth noting we have also added 10 extra Atlas passive points you can earn by completing 5 different unique maps.
10 Atlas point in più.
Now, new maps are just the beginning. We had a goal where we wanted to make sure you were constantly finding exciting new content, and that it could be lurking around any corner. So, we have added a bunch of new things that you could stumble into in any map you run.
On your travels, you will sometimes encounter rogue exiles. Others like you who have been exiled and are openly hostile.
I rogue exile.
Some are malicious,
Solitamente sono
some are
appunto
mad,
dei
while
elite
others are
particolari,
simply fiends for
parecchio
loot.
forti e a volte anche
They
dei
will
boss,
challenge
diciamo,
you, a
unici,
fight to the death.
ripresi dalle meccaniche
They use the
dell'1.
same skills available to players, and even the same items. They aren't just dressed up in those items, they're actually using them. It's going to feel like a true player versus player situation. Of course, if you are able to slay these exiles, those items will all drop on the ground. So if you encounter an exile using a powerful or valuable unique item, which you can see displayed under their life bar, you want to be damn sure you kill them. Because if they kill you and your party, they'll portal out taking their items with them. Every fight will feel completely different depending on the
poi
items
vanno
they come
via.
equipped with.
Quindi se li uccidi praticamente puoi droppare l'oggetto unico che loro
They have
stanno
capabilities
utilizzando.
to dodge
praticamente.
roll, avoid your abilities with smart pathfinding,
Infatti ti dice in
smart
alto
targeting,
Asde,
and
Three
much more
Dragons
action-packed
equipped, The Culture of Crimson.
Fortunately, they're like
Li
you
uccidi e
and they're not
droppano
super
quell'oggetto
durable.
unico.
Unless of course they're wearing uniques like Calm's Heart, in which case expect a longer battle. There are 12 different rogue exiles you can find,
Madonna.
each with their own skills and personalities.
Enorme, enorme
Some may
ragazzi,
insult you,
enorme,
while others may admire your honor in combat.
enorme.
Another encounter you might stumble onto in Dawn of the Hunt are one of 4 new unique strongboxes.
Strongboxes are chests with
Ah,
modifiers.
ok.
When you try to open them, they
Strongbox.
activate traps and spawn waves of monsters that you must defeat to access the loot.
Questo ci piace
Let's take a look at 2
particolarmente.
of the new unique boxes that are harder to find and behave just a little bit differently. The Ogham's Legacy Strongbox has a corpse splayed out in front of the
Ah, che
rune-carved
spettacolo.
stone. Upon interacting with the stone, you activate Forbidden Ezomite magic, which revives the monster as a powerful rare. The Strongbox comes with a modifier which determines how many times it will revive that rare. Each time you defeat the monstrosity, the Strongbox revives it again, adding an extra modifier to the monster. With each resurrection, it becomes more difficult, but also more rewarding. This Strongbox is infused with Thaumaturgy from ancient File technology. Eshel's
31
Torment
packs
has a
of monsters.
powerful artifact inside, and is guarded by Chaos itself. Defeating the monsters will grant you a unique item, with a specific corrupted outcome.
Hanno aggiunto
You'll have to
però
find the other two
tanti
for
layer
yourself
di
to see what they do.
difficoltà, Ora si può aggiustare veramente
Now,
tantissimo
let's talk about the
le
introduction
varie
to the in-game.
meccaniche, andando però
Upon
spesso
starting
e
the in-game,
volentieri a
Doriani
potenziarle
tasks you with
tantissimo,
cleansing
quindi bisogna
corruption
stare
to help
attenti
restore the
di
land.
fatto se...
However, in practice, the quest objective just sent you on a grind to clear 15 maps. We wanted to make the quest to unlock your Atlas passives much more interesting.
Now, Doriani is tasking you with a more specific objective. On the Atlas, you will find areas of corruption caused by the beast. In the center of each one, you will find a corrupted nexus, the source of the affliction. In the areas leading up to the nexus, you will notice that corruption spills out from slain enemies and amalgamates into powerful monsters. Corrupted maps existed on the Atlas before, but we've done significant work on improving these monsters. We've also done a full pass on the modifiers on these maps to make them more interesting and more rewarding. Once you reach the Nexus, you'll have a new task: cleanse the source of corruption. When you defeat the last rare in those maps, they will spawn one of 3 terrifying bosses, amalgamations of corruption itself. After defeating that boss, Doriani will come and cleanse the corruption for good. As the remains of the boss are purged of corruption, it coalesces into raw crystallized power, which you can use to gain points for your Atlas passive skill tree, the upgrade system that allows you to add and enhance content in your maps. We didn't stop there though. When you complete a corrupted nexus, all of the remaining surrounding corrupted maps will become cleansed maps. Cleansed maps also have new monsters, a new boss, and their own set of modifiers and rewards, including finding fracturing orbs by slaying cleansed enemies.
Fracturing
These
Orb,
orbs can be used in crafting on a rare item to cause one of its modifiers to become
altro crafting,
fractured.
vabbè.
A fractured
Poi
modifier
magari ti
is one
uscisse
that cannot be
sempre...
modified by any means. You are able to freely modify the item, ensuring the
Sì,
fractured
Fractured
modifier
è
will
come
never
in
change.
Path of Exile
If you
1,
get the right item
praticamente
with the right
identico,
mod, it can prove
ti
to be
crea
a very powerful
un...
crafting base indeed.
ti crea
You must
un'abilità
now
che non si può
choose.
più
Do
modificare, quindi
you complete all the
rimane,
corrupted maps and then the
rimane lì,
Nexus?
grande
Or
Voodoo.
maybe you beeline to the Nexus, complete it, and do all the remaining maps cleansed. Both have rewards to entice you and challenges to assess.
Now, let's have a talk about towers.
One thing we've had a lot of feedback on is the busy work around running towers and managing your tablets. The first change we've made here is that we have reduced the number of towers drastically, so there are now 1/3 as many as before, but we've made them much more
Ok,
powerful.
molte meno torri.
To start with, tablets now inherently add twice as many mechanics. But that's not all. Running higher tier maps and towers now increases the number of mechanics applied by tablets.
Ok.
By tier 15, the bonus is double, allowing a single tablet to now add 4 times as many mechanics as before. So, we're running far fewer towers, dealing
Ah,
with fewer
ok, invece
tablets,
di
and
la torre,
affecting
invece di
even
prendere
more maps than
9-10
before.
mappe, ora ne
But because
prende
there are fewer
28.
towers overlapping with each other, you won't get as many opportunities to stack different tablets. In order to solve this, we've made it so that each tower can consume up to 3 tablets at once. You always get 1 slot on completing the
Si
tower,
possono mettere
but
fino a
if you
3
can complete a
tavole.
tower with more mods on the Waystone, you can unlock a 2nd or 3rd slot. Overall, this allows for even more juicing from towers, while drastically reducing the amount of busy work you have to do.
Ah, ok, quindi
On top
più è
of that,
potente la
towers are
mappa,
much
diciamo,
more
con cui
interesting
si fa la
maps because they
torre,
can now spawn
e
with
più
all
modificatori
mechanics,
otteniamo perché ci
including
possiamo
bosses.
mettere più
Each
tavole.
tower map has a new boss. Let's take a look at a couple here.
The boss fight of the Alpine Ridge map has 2 powerful witches contesting for territory. One witch has an affinity for ice, the other fire. Who will win? Hopefully neither.
Bello questo.
The boss of the Sinking Spire map is a remnant of the Val that has been charged with lightning. It uses a full suite of lightning abilities, but be careful. If any of them hit the surrounding constructs, they will power up.
Another thing that we've seen a lot of feedback about is sustaining Waystones. As we looked into it, we realized that the people who couldn't sustain Waystones were dying a lot. A lot more than we had expected. And that made us realize something. During the campaign, the expectation is that you can die multiple times in order to learn how to overcome challenges. You are able to learn how the monsters behave, adapt to their skills, and eventually overcome them. But as soon as you get to the endgame, you are effectively no longer allowed to die if you want to sustain Waystones. By the time you are getting towards the end of endgame, we want you to have to be careful not to die. But it certainly shouldn't be that we have such a sudden shift as you run your first maps.
The first change we're making is you can now respawn and return to a map if you die. Continuing from where you left off. When you start the endgame, you get up to 6 total attempts per map. As you add more modifiers to a waystone, the number of respawns goes down.
Ok.
This means that as you get to the point that you're running every waystone as a rare,
Un po'
you will have
strano
to be more careful.
che
In
le rare
parties,
rimangono uno solo.
everyone gets to respawn that number of times. But we still think it's important that you can kill a boss in one go. In order to allow that to happen, we've made a change so that once you start the boss fight, it changes over to the same respawning system we use for pinnacle bosses. This means that the map owner can choose to respawn everyone at the same time. Another complaint we've seen a lot of is players not wanting to do the pinnacle content because of the experience penalty from dying. A change we've made here is that all pinnacle content now no longer grants experience, but also no longer removes experience on death either. Dawn of the Hunt
non
also
si perde
brings
più
the first
esperienza
batch
ogni
of
pinnacle.
Twilight Order reliquary keys from the early access supporter packs. These keys contain items selected by our supporters. They can contain any unique item found in Path of Exile 2. If the selected item is a pinnacle boss drop, then only special keys dropped by this content will be able to provide these items. For example, Hand of Wisdom in action can only come from a key dropped by Zesht. We're also making a
C'è
change
da
that allows
rivedere
pinnacle boss
un
uniques to
attimo
drop at
la
any
storia dei
difficulty.
respawn perché non ho
Rarer
capito.
uniques will be rarer at lower difficulties,
Cioè, se fai
but
le
still
rare
impossible to
adesso
find.
hai più
This
possibilità
applies to the
di...
drop charges for
Cioè,
the
hai più
reliquary keys from
portali,
this
però
content as
una
well.
volta faceva vedere ne hai uno solo, te lo dice la mappa.
We
Quindi la
spoke about
Waystone ti dirà
towers and
quanti
tablets earlier,
portali
but we
hai
have also
per
added a
fare quella
suite of unique
mappa.
tablets. Each of these adds crazy interactions to the maps influenced by it. For example, this unique tablet allows you to run any map in a tower's radius without requiring connections, which can be quite useful for jumping gaps and traveling around your atlas. And this tablet causes all runic monsters spawned during expedition encounters to be duplicated, and weakens all expedition monsters that emerge from the ground. The Atlas tree has also been expanded, and you can find many of the new mechanics there, and improvements to existing ones too.
Ah, bello anche questo.
Now, through this live stream, we have mentioned quite a
Sembrerebbe che
few
invece
new
le
crafting options
meccaniche
that we've
particolari,
added.
quindi
New
Ritual,
runes,
Breach, sia
corrupted
rimasto le stesse,
essences,
invece
fractured
l'Atlas,
mods, and
diciamo
jewelry
quello
crafting
base, è
bases.
cambiato.
But we did have just one more crafting system to talk about: recombination.
Expedition was the only in-game mechanic that was lacking a crafting system, so that needed to
Ok,
change.
questo è rimesso da Path of Exile 1,
Recombination
quindi
is a
si può
mechanic that might
fondere
be familiar
insieme
to
due
some players.
oggetti.
It allows you to merge 2 items together, hoping to get the best elements of each on a single new item. This new crafting bench will be unlocked as you complete
E
your
questo
first
solitamente
expedition,
però costa
and
abbastanza
requires
risorse,
artifacts found during
solitamente.
expeditions to fuel it. The rarer the mods on the item you are combining, the more expensive the cost.
That wraps up all the major in-game changes we're talking about today. With all the system changes and new content, we can't wait to get in there, start blasting maps, and obliterating monsters. There is one more thing we wanted to clarify before we move on, which is that all the content we've talked about today will be made available in the existing early access leagues, so you can play your existing characters. However, there will be new leagues made for those who wish to start in a
Quanta
fresher
roba,
content.
ragazzi.
It is recommended to start over and get the full new experience in the Dawn of the Hunt leagues.
For all our existing early access players, we're really looking forward to joining you playing in this new update. For those who don't already have access and are interested in playing Path of Exile 2, Dawn of the Hunt, you are able to at any time purchase an early access supporter pack at www.pathofexile2.com. Additionally, the Paladin and Penance supporter packs are now available to purchase in Path of Exile 2 and contain 6 microtransactions each, and the full pack's face value in points.
La
All the
fiammata
microtransactions
di
contained within these packs
MTX.
are purely cosmetic and do not affect your character's power or progression in any way. Thank you so much for your ongoing support. We're just about to start the Q&A with Ziggy D. With release at the end of next week, our community team will be posting crucial information you'll need for the release. Keep an eye on the news. On release weekend, we expect to launch the new
Mamma
mystery
mia,
box and many new
quante
microtransactions,
novità,
including
quante
Path of
novità,
Exile 2's
ragazzi.
first
C'è
alternate skill effects.
tantissime cose.
Thanks for joining us today and checking
Solo
out
le
our latest developments.
Ascendancy
We're looking forward
ci
to
sono
playing the
veramente tanti
Huntress,
contenuti, ma la
trying new
cosa
builds,
veramente
and
clamorosa
exploring the new
sono i
in-game next week.
100 support
We'll
gem,
begin the Q&A
ripeto,
shortly,
100
so
support
please get
gem
your
in più,
questions ready.
100 unici in più aggiuntivi. C'è veramente tante cose. E soprattutto l'ascendancy del negromante con gli spettri. Aiuto.
Good morning, Exiles, and welcome to the Q&A portion of today after a very exciting reveal with lots in it. Exceeding our
No,
expectations
sbaglio
with
non
the
si sente
crafting.
questo tizio.
But on that note, we're joined here by Jonathan and Mark to talk about all that was today and more in the future of Path of Exile 2. And you had an update about the recombination.
Yes, that's
first,
right.
though.
That's right. Yeah, so we actually last night had a bit of a design session and realized that we weren't actually fully happy with the way that recombination worked. So we actually made quite a big change to it, which wasn't reflected in that video, obviously. Which is basically that we sort of
Voi
wanted
li
to
sentite perché è parecchio
give a
basso.
bit more control to the player over how recombination works. And we also kind of weren't really happy about the fact that recombinators is something that like kind of matters a lot for really ultra endgame players. But it
Sì,
wasn't something that was really
esatto.
mattering a lot for like the people who effectively got access to the feature at
Non è
the
che
start.
più di così,
So we've
ragazzi, non
actually
lo posso
changed it
alzare.
now so that the way it works is that you pick which mods you want on the
Hanno
on
scazzato i
the
microfoni.
each item from each item, and then it gives you a percentage chance of success based on the number you picked. So if you pick just like one from one and one from the other, then the chance is much higher. But if you pick if you pick 6 mods, it'll become practically impossible. So effectively, like the more you're wanting to design the item, the less of a chance of actually having success. So
Mamma
it
mia,
means that if you
ragazzi,
just
già
want to get like
per
a mod,
la
if you want to get
live
an
di
item with like
domani
these 2
con
mods that I
i
found off the
Dungeon
ground,
Rider ce ne
that's
sarà da
relatively easy.
scorpacciarsene,
If you want to get
veramente.
an item which has, all of them, then very hard. So we think that's a much better design because it means you can kind of use the recombinators actually become something that you
Io
can
vi
use
ripeto
from a relatively
nuovamente,
from the first point you get
100
them.
support
But there's still this kind of
gems
end game,
nuove.
like for perfect stuff, you might still be able to do it with more. It is kind of balanced though, so that like if you pick literally all 6, then it's going to be like incredibly low to the point of
100
like
support
don't even
gem,
try that. Like
100
4 mods might be
oggetti
a good thing to
unici
sort
nuovi.
of be striving for, that kind of thing, and then exalt the other 2, that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's kind of the new design of that. So hopefully that'll be in by the time 0-2 comes out. We've kind of got a plan for doing that. But yeah, like I think it's a much better design than what we had before for recombinators.
If it's not there for O2O, it'll be
Yeah,
as
very
soon as it
soon.
can afterwards.
Very soon,
But yeah, spur of the moment, night before the live stream design sessions.
Yeah.
But
Bit of you of both.
increased player agency and visibility into the success result is just a win. And honestly, took way too long to, get to the point of us actually going, this is just straight up better to have observability into that and the freedom of choice. So.
Sure.
Yeah, that's the thing. Recombination definitely felt like something that was both really high end in terms of the crafting that it was intended for, but also just even understanding it. This seems much more intuitive because
You just pick what you
selecting
want.
the mods you want.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
So it does sound like it's a little bit of a nerf for the very high end of crafting there. Like,
It might end up being, but I'm not like it sort of depends on how the numbers come out. Like because we only just designed this, we need to still work out like exactly how the numbers end up looking. But I mean, look, we have to make sure. Obviously, whenever we're designing any crafting system, we have to be really sure that we're not like screwing over finding stuff on the ground. So you have to sort of have that balance, and that's so
Mamma
that kind
mia,
of informs everything we
ragazzi,
do with crafting.
troppe
One
cose.
difference
Ci
here, though,
vuole-
of course, is if the success chance fails,
The item's just
both
deleted,
items
yeah.
are destroyed as opposed to always keeping one.
Yeah.
So
okay.
So it's
Whether
basically
or
percent
not
chance for success, and if it fails, item's gone. So
What,
yeah.
roughly, what do you think you try to pitch at just choosing 2 mods at? Like,
It depends on what mods you're selecting, but I'm kind of thinking kind of like 35%-ish kind of thing for like 2 normal mods, that kind of thing.
them both
Like
to
for them
go
both,
over?
for them both. For if you pick 2,
Yeah.
and then but we'll
It kind of depends. Again,
It kind of depends. We'll see how we have to do
higher
some
tier
mathing.
mods are rare. And,
Yeah, exactly. So it sort of
it
depends on the
also
situation.
the other thing is it's going to now have a fixed cost, so it's not gonna
Yeah.
you know.
And the idea is
dollar
like,
based on
yeah, and the idea is like doing a single expedition should be enough to do a recombination. So, you're going to be doing them like relatively often as you're doing expeditions.
So is the part of Expedition where you get to craft with the NPCs still a thing then? Now that you're adding this?
Yeah, I mean, you've still got that whole mechanic, and like, so it's competing for the artifacts.
Yeah.
Between recombination versus buying things from that other way.
So is there some buffs intended for that then to make it more competitive?
Not
with-
yet. It definitely needs some love in the future, but not at this time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It seems like the systems can kind of go hand in hand, where one is giving you items that you can then potentially recombinate.
That is also true. You can use the ingredients of one in the other, or the outcome of one as an ingredient in another. Yeah.
Cool. We'll talk more about crafting a little bit later on for sure, because there was a lot announced there, which I'm quite excited about. Definitely exceeded my predictions for what you'd be adding in terms of crafting. But firstly, though, just a quick clarification on the league. So there's not going to be a wipe for the new players joining us.
Right.
If you were playing on a character, you can still keep playing on a character. But a lot of long-term Path of Exile players know the importance of playing on a fresh start, and that's also really important for you guys as well.
For sure, yeah. I mean, basically, if we don't have like any character that's come from before, you're just not gonna because the balance is so different and because so many things have changed. There's
fresh
no point in
start,
even listening to
quindi
feedback for
si
someone who's playing in the
riparte.
old league. Like, it really has to be that you're doing the fresh start, and we're sort of seeing how things go in the new economy. So like we were really sort of it was kind of an interesting
ci
decision
abbiamo
about whether or
dato,
not
sì,
we
su un
should
po'
make
di
it so
cose
that
ci
all the
abbiamo
content is
dato.
exclusive. Or rather, what amount of content would be exclusive to the league versus not. And the issue that we had is that, so I mean, like, a league means something in Path of Exile. In order for something to rise to the level of a league, it needs like a certain amount of features. And the original thing we were thinking about doing that way would be the Asmerian Wisps. But there wasn't quite like the kind of like meta mechanics and stuff with that. So like we didn't quite rise to the level of feeling like it deserved to be a challenge league. And at the same time, we've also got a lot of new players playing Path of Exile 2 who never played Path of Exile before. So we're a little bit we kind of were deciding like, okay, should we should
Non
we
lo
make it
so,
exclusive or not? We sort
Storm
of
e
decided,
Green
you know
Fist,
what, for this
aspetta,
one we're
vediamo,
not
che
going
dei
to.
nerf ancora ne hanno
And then,
parlato.
what we'll probably try and do is for the next league that we do, we'll actually make it a proper challenge league with like its own exclusive mechanic and so on. But yeah, it's a little bit funny because like in early access is a bit of a different situation, and so yeah, we'll sort of see how this goes anyway. But certainly I would encourage everyone just like start again on a new character, and I think you'll have a much better time because obviously if there's structural changes to the passive tree. It's like if you log in with your old character, you're going to have like your tree's going to get reset. You have to do stuff. There's things like that are going to happen that mean that and also just balance changes, right? Like huge numbers of them. So you're going to have a better time playing from the start.
That's it. And speaking of the Huntress then, so we saw initial Huntress quite some time ago now and had some hands-on time with it and things, but I certainly, having played that before and played it now recently, the Huntress has changed quite a lot.
Yeah.
So what was the, how hard was it to get it ready for release? What was kind of the key there?
I mean, it's funny because class design is one of those things where every time you add something, it can make you reevaluate everything else, which is why it's so hard to predict like how long a class will take. So like it changed a lot since the last time we had we were showing Huntress. And honestly, like, it's like while there are some skills that you will still see, like it just plays completely different. And I mean, whenever we're looking at like how we're going to design something like this, it really comes down to like what is the special about the character class? Like how can we double down on that to make sure it feels different? So with the Huntress, you've obviously got spears as a base type. The key difference between a spear and any other weapon type is that you can both use them at melee and you can also use them at range. You can throw them. And so because of that, we really trying to incentivize everything possible so that you use both of those things. And action RPG players, they generally speaking, the balance can often be such that you only really want to do one thing and do that one thing well. So trying to incentivize the kind of ranged and melee is quite a thing. And I mean, the way we do it effectively is try to make sure that like there are combo chains where a ranged thing can combo with something that's melee, and a melee thing can combo with something that's ranged, and then also give you good abilities to move between states. And so that kind of means that you end up with a very like agile character, like you're constantly moving like backwards and forwards and kind of moving around. And I would say that like given that it's the Dex character, that it's good that it feels that way, that it feels the most agile of all of the melee character classes. That's been a really good one. But I mean, look, there are, in terms of changes, I mean, look, there are just changes all the time. Like the frenzy charge thing was like relatively late in development. Like there's like quite a lot of things going on that just meant that the field kept on evolving. And another big one, of course, was parry, which I honestly was very skeptical of working. And Mark, Mark was the one who saved it. Honestly, like I was like, you know what? There was like 3 times I think where I was like, you know what? I don't think it's gonna work. And then you were like, okay, I think we're gonna save this.
I was like, give me a week.
Yeah, exactly. And it works completely differently for most games, because in most games, obviously, for parrying, the way that works is that you have to time to push the block button at exactly the right time.
Poi abbiamo
That's just
visto
something that just
nel
wouldn't
video
work in our
i
combat system
totem
because
balista.
you're often packs of monsters. It's just like you don't really have the ability to read combat in that way in our game. And at the same time, we need to make something where there's going to be like if a single monster in a pack hits you, you need to be able to respond to that with something that's going to you need to be able to respond in a way where you don't just then immediately get hit by a bunch of other stuff.
Yes.
So having it so that the parry, like it always parries, but it's then taking advantage of what the parry does to the monster by following up with something that's going to give you like an explosion or something like that to kind of deal with the pack. That's something that sort of allows that counter gameplay to work in our game. So you've kind of got 2 primary parry follow-ups. You've got the frenzy charge one, which dashes back, which means that you don't have to worry about the monsters hitting you. And then you've also got the one that there's another one which I don't believe we showed there.
Per il momento non ci è parlato di movement skill particolari
does a counter where you
e
attack
neanche di
with
nessun
ice,
tipo di
which freezes
rework
the pack.
per il
So it's another way to kind of, so
resummon
in
dei
both cases
minion
you've kind of got something that's kind of
o
dealing with the fact that you've all these
abilità
monsters
che
around
li
you.
richiamano,
And that was
tipo
kind of the biggest challenge I think
Convocation
that we had with that
in
mechanic.
Path of Exile 1.
Yeah, I'll also make note of there was a support gem I found that you can attach to any attack that allows you to follow up parry to generate a frenzy charge too. So it doesn't even have to be the backflip.
Yeah,
You
in
can
that case. Yeah, there's other.
create your own parry.
Yep, and then of course there's always Sniper's Mark, and there's like there's a skill that does give you a guaranteed crit, so that's a potential option as well. Like you've got a few different ways to generate them.
Because parry guarantees a light stun.
Yeah.
You always get that small window to actually engage or do a thing before before you're under danger again.
And I'll tell you this, like, I am one of those players who never parry, right? In any game ever, because I can never do it. It's always just so frustrating. So I was very skeptical of that, but it feels really good.
Magari
Both
mettessero
managed to make it
Convocation.
something that's easy to do because you can just hold the button
No,
down
you
at
got-
any time. There's no skill involved in that. But at the same time, you've incentivized making it so that you do want to still try and time it as best you can personally. Well, how have you done that? How have you made it so that like you actually still want to kind of play it skillfully?
Well, I mean, ultimately, anytime you're holding down the parry button is when you're not attacking, right? So you still want to kind of minimize the window, but at the same time, like the timing is just not like, not as bad. But the nice thing as well is that like once you do successfully parry, it's very obvious. You get the sound, you get the token on the monster. It's very chunky.
Yeah.
So it means it's very obvious when you're supposed to counterattack. So yeah, I'm very happy with that. I think that it came out really well. And honestly, one of the funny things about it is that it immediately made me realize like how bad shields are in comparison, which is why we're also trying to ninja in a change to how shields work at the last minute, which we'll see if it makes it into 020. I was playing around with it last night.
This was 8 p.m. last night.
Yeah, 8 p.m. last night, exactly. I was
messing with this.
Yeah, messing around with it. And I won't talk too much about how that's going to work, but effectively we want to make shields, the shields better as well, and kind of build something into those to make them more interesting.
Yeah.
So that's the plan there. We'll see if it makes it for 020.
Yeah, following that kind of similar design space idea of being able to do a bit more with it.
Yeah,
and then
100%.
that feed into other skills and things like that as well.
100%.
There's a lot of room there to play with.
Yeah.
So we talked about Huntress being very, very combo heavy, and she has the deepest combo chains out of anyone so far, even exceeding like things you can do with Monk. You got 3-4 different skills deep of things you can start to synergize together. So how do you balance? How do you make that fun? Firstly, like rather than like onerous, for example.
Well, I mean, I guess there's a few things. Like one of them is it just has to be very readable and understandable when, like what you can do and when you can do it. And I think the other thing that's really to our advantage here is reusing skills in multiple ways, so you can make a deeper combo chain without requiring you to be using as many skills in order to do it. So the way that Whirling Slash and Tornadoes interact with ground effects and kind of like all that stuff sort of means that, you're using Whirling Slash multiple times as part of the same combo chain. And that's an idea, I think, that I'd like to try and explore more, because I think that it is a cool way to kind of
Madonna,
extend
ragazzi,
the
non so
combo chain.
nemmeno da dove
As I said, without
iniziare.
sort of getting too many things involved, and makes it a lot cooler. So yeah, I'll think a bit more about how we can apply that to other classes and other skills. But yeah, it's worked out really well here.
Yeah, it's a bit of like a loose create your own combo system in a way. Like obviously there's intended combos, but because it's interacting with something that's fundamental like ground effects, you're able to combo with anything that creates a ground effect. And there's a lot of different ways you can do that. Like I added shocked ground to the backflip skill, or I got a companion pet that had a shocked ground aura.
Nice.
As like that was just there and that was available all the time.
I mean, it's funny as well because it also works on just enemy ground effects, and so sometimes you can just get a damage boost because the rare just happened to be dropping ground fire or something. So that's kind of fun. Yeah. But it's been it's just a lot of fun to play. The first time I ran into that was actually in the graveyard where there's these like chests that like pop open with fire, and like I was using tornadoes, and then one of them just randomly turned into a fire tornado, and I'm like, oh, what happened there? Oh, yeah, sweet. It was just like a really cool moment where it just sort of interacted with the environment, which was really fun.
It always feels like you're getting a little bit of something extra for free when you're taking advantage of the enemy effects, or a boss fight that just has burning ground everywhere. It's like, sweet. So how do you go about balancing, though, when you have a class that has deeper combos and kind of somewhat requires you to do a bit more versus a class or a skill or a build that is just bonk?
I mean, you have to ultimately make the combos matter, right? And I think actually that's one of those things that we're trying to really focus on with the balance changes we're doing in Dawn of the Hunt more generally, is making sure that even, like, I think it's the case where some of the combo gameplay kind of degenerates a little bit by end game in a way that, like, I want to make sure it still feels rewarded. And so we were sort of doing various checks, recently about, like,
La storia del juicing delle meccaniche è veramente allora interessante ma anche strana, perché l'hanno detto anche loro che in alcuni frangenti i boss diventano immortali, quindi anche lì vediamo un po' come hanno pensato di svilupparlo, perché insomma che poi veramente si creino meccaniche improponibili.
That we're like
Poi
making
c'è
sure
i
that when
Rogue
we're doing
Exile.
it, it's to support the fact that using more things is actually a good thing. Yeah, we're really trying to make sure that we're bringing some of that, improving some of that stuff as well as we're making the balance changes.
So do you have like a baseline there of where like the really simplest build should be, the build that just bonks? Like,
I mean, you mean in terms of damage or in terms of like what it does? I mean, we always want.
I guess
you'd be able to build that way,
the
but
players have to do a combo.
I mean,
like,
no,
people who don't want
ultimately
to,
you never have to, right? But it sort of what it means is that you are sacrificing something. And look, the ideal situation is that like you don't feel like you have to do combos. You feel like you want to do combos, right? Like, because you feel rewarded for them. It's like should feel like a fun, like, oh, I can add this. Like it's the feeling you should be getting.
Yeah. I think the Huntress is doing that very well. It must have been like extremely hard, because I don't think I've ever seen like ranged melee combo done well before.
Right. Well, I mean, it does require a lot of discipline, and it means that a lot of skills like end up on the cutting room floor because you try them out and then you realize, well, if this is in the game, then that's the only thing I'm ever going to do. So you got to be really careful about that stuff.
Certainly, playing the Huntress now makes me go back and look at the other classes and be like, we need to up that the level there, and we missed the mark a little bit now because this is better. And
Sì,
who's to
patch
say the next
immensa,
class won't
ragazzi,
even be better and make us
patch
question even this? But
but that's the way it is with class design.
That's what he says when we like literally when you make a new class, you question everything. He's not understating the level of
È
questioning.
un gioco nuovo,
Yeah, do you see
solo
like
per
going
le
back to the market at some point
meccaniche,
and looking for more
una
like
roba.
opportunities to link skills together with
I mean,
combos?
we haven't got to the full skill set for any class yet, and we need to add more pieces.
Doriani, anche quella va rivista
skills that
perché
were designed and then
un
hunted
po' complessa.
in the monk currently.
Range are the same. There was extra poison
Ovviamente,
skills. It was tended to be more chaos darts. All kinds of stuff.
nelle
We have to
mappe
obviously at some point fill all that in.
corruption.
Hard to say when, but we're going to try and incrementally get it, like much like how Ray Spectre and I mean the mount works with the Huntress, but we were like, let's give something for the Ranger this time. Let's give something for the
Poi hanno fatto
summoners
vedere
out
nuove
there this time,
Hurlens,
so we're just going to keep filling in those gaps over time.
però
And it feels like you're getting
non
better
ci hanno
at class
detto
and
quali
skill design
sono.
as you go too. So I imagine the last class you're going to release is going to be like amazing. You'll look back at the first
C'è
ones and be like,
Recombinator.
Possibly.
Well, that is the worry, but whatever. That's
But look, with that, which means we've got another round of going through everything and improving stuff again, right? So
and that will never end.
That's it. So with the parry came the kind of looking at the player getting stunned, in particular player heavy stun. So it's always hard to tell players like, hey, we're going to do something to you and it's going to be bad thing. You're not going to like this.
Well, the funny thing,
Let's talk about why.
Il Fracturing Orb
there's a few
è
things like
molto
that,
probabile
actually,
che
because,
all'inizio costerà
so, I mean, for a
una,
start, like, we needed the downside of parry to be,
un
you know, like,
mutuo.
you get stunned out of it. But then when we're
Solitamente si
looking at how
va
long, like, we're like, okay,
botte di
right
Divine
now,
perché
and it's true with shield block as well,
fondamentalmente
by the way. It's like, if
appunto
you get stunned out of that, the
il
amount of time that
fracturing
you get stunned out for
diciamo si
is
può
actually not even
imprimere
enough
su un
time for most
oggetto
bosses to do a follow-up attack
e
on
gli
you.
dà una
It's like, well, where's the downside if
statistica
it doesn't even have enough time? So
particolare
we
che
did
poi
have to extend
non
that
si
out a
può
little
più
bit,
modificare,
and it makes
e
you a
se
little
ce
bit
ne
more
esce
careful.
una veramente
But
potente è
just to
ottimo
warn
perché
people,
poi
right, there's a few other
possiamo
things like
andare a
we lowered
ricraftare
what's
tutto
called the
l'oggetto sapendo che
I can't remember the name of that thing
quell'affisso
now, the thing that makes
particolare
you more
rimane.
easy to
Quindi ad esempio faccio
aim until
l'esempio di
statuses
un
apply to you.
wand per
Ailment threshold,
per
that's
i
right, ailment
minion
threshold, yeah.
con
So we
minion
lowered ailment
skill,
threshold to
se ci
actually make
esce
sure the
nel
player has
fracturing
those
possiamo
mechanics
andare
happen
appunto
more
a
to them, right? Because
ricrattarcelo
like right now
tutto
through
e quindi
campaign,
poi ci
like you barely
rimane
get frozen or burning
l'affisso
or
più
shocked
level
really, to
to
be
all
honest.
minion skill,
So there's stuff
che
like that
sarebbe
we've had to
quello
do to kind of
che
make
ci
sure
interessa
that
nella wand.
you know, that because if you don't have that stuff actually happen to you, then there's no point in mitigating it. And it's like, you know, things like charms were like not very useful because, you know, those mechanics weren't happening to you. There's stuff like that, right? The downsides do actually matter in order to make it so that, you know, that you then,
Ragazzi,
you know,
sicuramente
there's other
l'avete
things you
fatto,
can
ma
do to sort of bypass those downsides.
se non
So
l'avete
yeah, that's kind
fatto,
of one of those things that,
vi
you know, we
ricordo
just have to
appunto
make
che ci
sure
sono i
is
drop
there.
attivi, quindi
I did always find it a little bit
collegate
strange that like
l'account
I was
di
able
Path
to
of
count
Exile,
the number of
insomma,
times I was frozen in the
con
campaign on
Twitch,
one
e
finger.
poi potete
For sure.
riscattare il drop della
sure.
live.
For sure. But
And
yes,
it's always by those vile ghosts.
yes.
So
Wraiths.
expect a little bit more, a little bit more danger from the stun. I definitely died a couple times to getting heavy stun.
Yeah, it can
So
happen.
that's mostly occurring if you're like doing bad blocking or parrying. But
Yeah.
can it also occur just from like taking a really big hit or something?
No.
At least we've discussed that. We've gone through a whole bunch of different, like, should certain boss abilities heavy stun you, and if you spec into enough stun threshold, it like demotes it to a light stun, and if that, you know, there's all kinds of multi-hour discussions we've had, and we haven't really come to anything conclusive there. But it's only from mount, raise shield, and parry, and of which, you know, at least for all of them, you can see your stagger bar filling up. It's worth noting things like evasion apply to. So when you're parrying, we turn off your evasion from taking damage because the block does, right? And otherwise you'd be like, I'm going to parry it. Oh, I evaded it. It didn't parry. Yeah. But you can evade the stagger build-up, so you don't take the damage anyway, just
The
before
evasion
anyone
still
misunderstands
works.
that.
The evasion still works.
Yeah.
So high evasion will mean you can parry for longer. There's a bunch of parry stuff on the tree, including damage affecting the debuff, the duration of the debuff, so you get to benefit for it longer. Reducing stagger is all over the place for both mount and so in the dex section of the tree. So yeah, you can mitigate. I mean, my expectation is probably you'll get some in-game builds that are just like, I can parry forever, and like, there's no real consequence. So not every skill can be parried, of course.
Yeah, it otherwise follows the slam rules. If it's a slam from above or below, you can't parry it. Much to your frustration for some things.
I mean, there are a few things where I've got disagreements about what looks like it's parryable, but...
my hopeful there was when it's contentious, people would bring it up and would change it, right?
Sure.
So, like, if it's on the line, it's meant to be blockable. Like, if it isn't clear. And there was no way with hundreds of monsters and many dozens of bosses that we weren't going to miss some things, so...
So you mentioned this a little bit earlier, but action RPGs kind of naturally pull you towards one damage type, one skill, one specific thing, and optimizing as much as possible, because otherwise you're just making a bad build a lot of the time. But I notice Huntress has a bit of everything. She's got bleed, she's got all the elements, she's got physical. The only thing she doesn't have is like chaos, but there's kind of poison on the tree right there. So how do you like promote this, like all of this different stuff together? Are you supposed to only kind of be relegated to using 2 or 3 skills, or are these supposed to come together, and how do you manage that?
Well, there's a few things. So one of them is that we provide a lot of combos with the expectation that you know, you'll probably be focusing around like a few specific things rather than necessarily using the whole tree. So like there's that. The other thing as well is just making sure that in the passive tree there's sort of options that go across both. So the Huntress's passive tree has quite a lot of things like, you know, extra melee damage if you've done a range attack recently, and
La
then it's got
Huntress,
things like
ragazzi, è
bonuses
veramente
against blinded
interessante
enemies
come
because while you're in
classe.
a
Se ci
whirling
fosse
slash, there's,
il
you know,
Negromante,
so
probabilmente
sort of stuff
giocherei
like that
la
where we're
Huntress,
trying to
ma non
carefully
ho
think like, well,
scelta.
how can we come up with something
Devo
that's
andare
interesting
Negromante
and
e
buffs
Spettri.
everything that you might want to be doing,
c'è
you know,
dubbio.
that kind of synergizes with the stuff that that Huntress can do. But it is honestly hard because yeah, like many categories of things only matter for one thing, part of a combo. So it's just like trying to come up with categories that can somehow span all of them in different ways. And ideally, we can achieve that. But yeah, it is pretty hard.
Generally, yeah, you're going to become more niche or more selective because, again, even mixing elemental and bleed is just probably often going to result
You
in
probably
something
wouldn't do both
suboptimal.
elemental and bleed. You'd probably choose one or the other. But that's why we kind of try to make sure that, like, so you've got sort of linkages between them, though, right? Because it's like, for example, the thunderous leap detonates the spears that you do from the bleed thing. So it's like kind of like the idea there is to like it changes how that skill then has a use in the combo with the other one. So even if that skill itself isn't doing a lot of damage, it's triggering something that's taking advantage of all the damage bonuses you got for the for your bleed stuff. So that's kind of like the idea, is just to link all that stuff in a bit. So that
Bisogna
you use
vedere
the
gli spettri
non
perché
like
forti
directly
ma costano veramente tanto
synergistic things in a
spirito,
kind of more
quindi anche
synergistic way.
lì
Yeah,
vediamo.
that's if you didn't see that from the earlier trailer, it's you spear them with a bunch of spears and then jump on and explodes them for bleed. Amazing. So, but yeah, that's using an elemental skill like in another way as detonator. But and even more, you've got weapon swaps as well.
Yeah, of course. I mean, there's all those systems we already added about all that kind of stuff. So I mean, like, what will be interesting is whether or not we miss something cross-class, right? That's always a concern. Is someone will come up with some way to abuse something, between something that's going on in the spear skills with some other class that we failed to consider.
Yeah, I mean, so that's it. When we look at a new class, we typically like call it like, Huntress is spears, but kind of not really. It's a signature weapon, but
absolutely
nothing in the Ascendancy prescribes spears.
Exactly. So effectively, we take great pains to make sure that the Ascendancies never mentions weapon types.
Quindi
that
ovviamente
there's,
con
like,
tutte
that they're
queste
always
aggiunte
generalized.
il
So,
path
for
of
example,
building,
the
ragazzi,
infusion mechanic
lo
in the
vedremo
Amazon, it just says projectiles, it doesn't say spears.
chissà
And the reason it
quando lo
does that is so that you
metteranno.
could make an
Lo
Amazon
devono
who
tutto
is
aggiornare,
a
lo devono
bow user,
rifare.
and that's all fine.
Ciao.
So yeah, like it's effectively like
Open-ended.
It's open-ended, and
Ciao.
honestly, like I know that Mark does like. It makes the constraint a lot harder for how to design an Ascendancy class when you have to think about it that way, for sure.
Oh, it'd be much easier to just put a bunch of cool spear stuff in there, but now only really. I mean, it was similar to the original POE1 Saboteur. It called out traps and mines, and so if you're a trap and mine character, what are you doing? Well, you could do something else, but no one else is playing that thing. You know, it isn't. It is easier to design. It is certainly less flexible and open as to what people can play in the different combinations and all that. So yeah.
How much do you have to consider the different weapons and the skills and how they interact together?
Qui la gente sta già scrivendo: rendetemi rogue farmabili e che si possono spawnare e che possono spawnare con temporali se ingenuiti.
But certainly we have to consider, like, is this going to be broken with anything else in particular?
I rogue appunto poi vanno a droppare chiaramente gli oggetti che hanno se li uccidiamo.
And even then, it's like, we often make mistakes and have issues. I mean,
when he says relatively impossible, it is actually impossible.
Actually.
But I mean,
That's
just
relative.
but even just looking at the balance pass we're doing at the moment, right? I mean, there's hundreds of things like that, that we still. I mean, there's things that we could never honestly understand all of the different broken things that could possibly exist, and so it's like it really does depend a lot on like on seeing reports on what people are doing on some level, right? But then I think that what will happen over time is obviously, like, the game's still relatively new. We're still making relatively big changes. Over time, the balance, I think, will get to the point where we no longer have these like crazy outliers to the same extent. And it should mean that we get to some sort of relative class parity. By parity, what I mean is, like, people playing all
Poi
the
mi
different classes
suggeriscono più
rather than focusing
25
on
nuove
a few,
skills
as we
gem.
get towards full release. Because right now it's obviously very skewed because there's certain broken things. So
Tante veramente.
the balance over time we'll get there.
It's one of the main goals and benefits of the early access is just like, let's get the balance of characters right. And this patch release was always going to have 1,000 problems, or probably 10,000 problems, the next one will have half that, the next one half that, and probably eventually it's going to be down to, like, here's only a few things going,
Tra l'altro abbiamo visto
out
anche
of
un
whack. There's always gonna be
potenziamento di
something, because we add
Expedition.
too much content for it to even be
E
controlled.
anche lì vediamo come sarà.
Again, there are too many uniques, too many supports, too
facciano
many
vedere
skills,
tutte
and too many
le...
other changes.
Insomma, si può spawnare più
Any amount of people,
mostri
like,
tutti
you're talking about a
insieme,
matter of
anche
you'd
lì
have to put in
non
like
va
thousands and
rivisto
thousands
un
of
attimo,
hours
c'è veramente
internally
tanta
to
roba.
find it where, and then you give it to the players. There's so many people, it's going to take literally 5 minutes. So it's very beneficial. And we're lucky in that regard that we get that level of testing and feedback and
on such a mass level, and especially, you know, with things like, you know, Ninja and all of that, and other people being able to see it and discuss it more openly, we're just going to be able to iterate on it even faster. But yeah, every single patch you're going to see a pretty substantial change in what's going to happen here. Yeah.
Thanks for making the broken builds. And
well, 100%, 100%.
I mean, you mentioned support gems. It's like over 100 support gems added just this patch. It's it's already like so many, and with you doing a different weapon for each of the 16 classes.
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be a lot by the time we're done. But there kind of has to be, right? Because
that's what you made. You made this system that you need so many supports to support.
You do.
Because otherwise, it's not going to work. Like especially with this one support system, it's like, what have you guys done?
Well, I mean, look, this is why we have recommendations, and hopefully we can improve those as well and continue to get that better.
Tra l'altro c'era un supporto
there's certainly room
interessantissimo
for
per i
the
minion.
complexity to get a little bit out of control here. So the recommendeds are going to become more and more important.
Right.
So we need to make sure those are
Che
very much
i
right.
minion sono più
We also look into
grandi,
players even to find some of those recommendations
fanno
down
più
the line.
In
damage,
some cases.
però se ne può
What
tenere
stuff is
meno.
popularly
Una
getting
Well,
roba
the
del
thing,
genere.
the thing with the
First off.
recommendations, though, is that
Quello
they
folle.
can't really take into account what you've already got on the gem. So
Yeah.
the recommendations have to be just sort of generally
Non si è
good, but not
parlato
really take into account
della
combos.
campagna, quindi
And,
aggiunta di
you know, that kind of means
nuove,
they're a bit more simple. Like the recommendations are going to
nuovi
be more
atti,
simple than what
sembrerebbe
you'd
di no.
otherwise be doing if you're not
Feels like,
following them.
feels like at some point you're going to need some sort of nested recommendation system. It's like, well, I'm kind of doing bleed stuff, so you go to the sub menu for bleed recommendations.
I'm less certain about that because I kind of don't want to get into the thing of actually telling you what your build should be. Yeah, that's a little different there.
Questo
Maybe
però
like,
ovviamente non lo
sorting methods
sappiamo,
for the
bisognerà andare a
show me
vedere
all the gems.
quando rilasceranno le patch notice,
Because there's a lot that
che
are only in there that are
appunto
never recommended,
ricordo
right?
hanno
There
detto,
are,
hanno
yes,
specificato
That's
che
it's
saranno la
gonna be an
prossima
interesting
settimana e
challenge.
invece
As
dovevano
I said,
essere
making up supports
subito
there.
dopo la live e
So
chiaramente
another thing
non è
that
mai
you
stato così
managed to challenge
in
set
tutti
yourselves,
gli
and I
anni
always
delle
wonder,
loro
like,
live.
why did you do this to yourselves? Was Spectres. So originally those were planned to be in for launch, but obviously Spectres are a whole can of worms. It's hey, let's just give players access to every monster. Also, we've made so many new monsters.
Yeah.
We're talking about all the broken. There's going to be some broken in there, I promise you. And there's going to be some stuff we have to change.
I mean, they've done, but I mean, effectively, what the time between early access and this was like, okay, let's actually attempt at least to do a balance pass of this and like see if there's anything that's going to be a problem and then adjust numbers
Yeah, but now
accordingly.
you've got to account all those support gems on all those monsters.
Yes, well, this is an interesting thing, isn't it? The support gems work. The support gems work on them, and you know, like, what the hell is that going to do? Yeah, like, it's impossible to completely know. But yeah, like, look, I mean, there's probably definitely some dark secrets lying in what kind of Spectre mixed with support gems are going to do.
And monsters have skills now. It's not like POE1 where it's
Exactly.
like just a bunch of zombies just doing default attack. It's like everything pretty much has a skill now at this point. So,
But you know, the great thing about it is we got to leverage all that work again for the beast taming as well. So and of course the difference there is that you also get the mods from the thing that you tamed. So you know, that's going to be
auras, ground effects.
yeah, exactly.
On death explosions.
No, you've got a whole nother ruckus of potential interactions. So you know, we'll see what happens there.
We've done nice specific player versions of those things, for which specifically when you tame the beast, so that they're not sitting there spamming skills in your hideout and all of that.
Good. Yes. So,
But also, like, there actually are player versions of the mods that Res can get. Like,
Anche
so
la
that we can
Huntress
balance
praticamente
them if we
c'ha
need
una
to.
sorta di
Because some of
roba
that stuff
minion,
was actually would
perché
be
appunto
ridiculous if you had it yourself.
cioè,
So, you know,
sconfiggendo i
we
mostri
still have it sort
li
of
può
work. It
prendere,
mostly works
diciamo,
the same way, but they'll just bring
come
numbers
diciamo
tweaked to the
animali
player
da
versions. And
compagnia,
the same
tra
works as well for
virgolette,
the
quindi anche questa
what do you
altra
call it, the
meccanica
ritual sacrifice,
interessante.
Headhunter and stuff like that. So yeah, player
Grazie del
versions of the
follow.
monster mods for that.
yeah, this new attention to these things is going to benefit like the pre-existing stuff like Headhunter and that as well. Yeah, that's insane.
There's a new... probably should let people discover it. There's a new unique charm that possesses you with a random Asmeri spirit as well, and so you get the daemons and the stats, and those technically also have player versions too, but actually not to necessarily make things worse, to make
Questa è
things better,
grossa.
because monsters are balanced to fight player life and monster life, not in the same universe. So actually what we've done is all the things you steal that are monsters and the monster skills, like the explosions and the summoning bears and all that, we've actually specifically balanced them way up to be more effective against monster
So when you steal them, they're much more powerful, actually.
Anche di questo
So they're not just tickling
hanno
monsters and
parlato,
doing
quindi non si sa
1% of your
se,
life
ad
for them.
esempio, in Simulacrum
It was
si
mentioned
muore,
in
si
chat
perde l'esperienza.
actually
Immagino
the
di
whole
sì.
like Asmeri
Però loro
modifiers
hanno
and things
parlato
and stuff
dei
that
pinnacle
wouldn't
boss
that
e
wouldn't
basta,
transfer over with
quindi
the
vedremo.
companion system surely.
No.
Yeah, that
Vedremo.
would be a little bit too far,
Yeah,
perhaps
yeah.
a bit unhinged.
We actually had to, because this is a benefit. Once you have tamed the beast, it is not tradable. And people might immediately be like, oh, so that's sad. Well, the issue is, and as much as you might want some of that, I'm sure you don't want to be carrying around a whole bunch of tame beasts in your inventory all the time. So that every single time you find a good rare, all of a sudden you have to go and...
Because the rumor that finding a rare would become a thing. Yes, exactly.
It's actually like this
think about that.
annoying, in order to make the most money, I have to be constantly thinking about and carrying around tame beasts.
But then we also made it so that as soon as you activate a beast, then no one who comes into the instance after that is allowed to tame it.
Can't do any,
so you can't TFT the
C'è tante cose strane che non sto capendo.
It's like a whole, like there's like a lot of thinking about that stuff in order to make it so that,
It's a sad thing to have lost, but it is like, no, I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not signing up
I
for
didn't
that.
even think about that.
Yeah.
The like needing for cheat sheets and guides
exactly,
and stuff.
right.
Like,
And so you have to be really
the
careful. You have to be so
currency
careful.
this week.
And then the thing is like it's like we design this thing and then think, oh, trading beasts is going to be fun, but then you realize that the horrific reality
actually.
of what it will turn into. It's like, yeah, okay,
Oh, no.
but yeah, at least we're thinking about that kind of thing. Like with more experience that we have now, early, so that we don't
We've
sort of
been
run
down
into
that
those
road
problems.
before.
Exactly.
Yes, we have.
Yeah.
I'm glad we've learned from past issues with that sort of trading.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So, talking about some of the other new skills, we had the addition of the Roa, which was teased quite some time ago, I think.
Yes.
But you've got it in and working now, and it looks like it's moving around pretty good.
Yes.
It's obviously
Mamma mia,
like a
ragazzi,
big downside. If you get knocked off
roba,
at heavy stun,
quanta
stuff, you can't
roba,
use melee from it, so it's for
roba.
ranged attacks.
Yeah.
But it does seem like one of those things that it's going to be like everyone's going to use or no one's going to use because it's a clear speed machine.
It is a concern. I mean, look, my ideal situation is that you're using it sometimes and not using it other times. Like, if you're using it like during clear, I think it will, like you will definitely want to. But we want to just make sure that we've got like sort of fun things like that, and like it's just a cool fantasy. Like there's stuff like that I just want to get in, and it's like look, if it doesn't work later, if we have to nerf it, I mean, sure, I suppose, but like I want something like that to exist. We believe that it is balanced as much as we can.
You sound very convinced.
Yeah, it's balanced.
As I said earlier, you can probably get builds that get to the point of parrying indefinitely. So you can. That means theory you can probably get to the point of running a row indefinitely.
Sure,
right?
sure.
Again, enough evasion and enough stagger speaking into and all of that.
Yeah.
Well, fundamental question actually. Like, what's its move speed based on? Its own move speed?
The move speed is just your move speed. Like but it's
Madonna,
what you
ragazzi, ci
don't
metto il
get
Demon
is the
Magus
penalty
con
for
Spettri,
weak attack.
sì.
That's the thing. But it's funny though, because like even though it doesn't have a move speed bonus, it feels like you're motoring when you're using it, just because of the fact you don't get that downside anymore. Like you feel like you're the fastest thing on the planet.
It is
when you're doing.
Yeah, there are other like more mechanical benefits, like it's considered a companion, which is a kind of subclass of minion that we've added, where you can only have one of each one companion base is a keystone for another, but you can only have one of each type. So, like, you can have a tame beast and a rower with the keystone.
Oh, right, yeah.
But inherently, you can only have one companion.
Right, so you can't use a tame beast if you're using the rower.
And then there are heaps of passives for, like, if you have a companion, like, companions while they're in your presence, and all that kind of stuff. Heaps of that stuff around the bottom of the tree.
Yeah, I saw you guys remade the minion damage, is player damage node on the tree. It's you companion damage nodes become player damage nodes, and I was like, oh, that looks like I'm going to take that.
Well, that's the, like, companion where it's, like, more the... mercenary over to ranger huntress is more like you want your one powerful minion, and benefiting that benefits you and you benefit it, and there's that like, synergy between you and your companions.
So since it is a companion, I like the idea of like balance wise maybe it ends up being that
Ok, qui stanno
that
fondamentalmente dicendo che
rollback.
praticamente cambiare, cioè rispetto ai minion normali del necromante di scheletri ad esempio, il companion è molto più forte, però ne hai uno, cioè quindi basi diciamo la tua build su un minion solo.
roll for
Yeah,
the
exactly.
where you
Tutti
need it.
quelli.
And does the rower then kind of do a bit when you're not on it?
It can attack, but I mean, it's not exactly a huge damage source or anything.
It's
like
certainly better to
yeah.
stay at ranged. It's
Yeah.
it's not the most durable of birds. For sure.
But it acts as a distraction. Maybe there's some
I
support
mean, it's a
gems
minion, right? Like
you
it
can do
attacks
with.
things and does stuff.
Yeah, you can support it with minion supports to make it more durable and all of that. So
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, there's the one that's like
Sì, di
minion takes 10%
fatto
of
hanno
the damage
buttato
before you do.
dentro
So
un sacco
sacrificial
di,
bird.
di
Yeah, yeah.
meccaniche
Poor little guy.
e cose in generali
So that's
e ti
that
dirò,
sounds.
secondo
I'm really
me
glad
sono
about
anche
that
troppe, cioè forse era
Speaking
meglio
new kind of
fare
100
prima un
uniques this
balance
time.
So
di quello
how many are we
esistente e poi
aiming for?
magari
Kind of
tirare
in
fuori
general, is this
qualcosa,
about
però
like filling that roster?
Well,
effettivamente
we
ci
want to
sta.
have every base type
Hanno
have
fatto una
unique
cosa anche
for purposes of
molto,
chance.
diciamo,
Outside of
esplosiva
boss
per
uniques.
far
Outside of boss uniques,
tornare le
but we want
persone che sono
every
andate
base type to have
via.
a
Insomma, si
unique
dice
that you can
un
chance.
po'.
And
Yes,
so that
okay.
was the eventual goal. One of the things, of course, that we had that was sort of a problem in
Prima di
early
GTA
access is that
6, sì.
because of the way, like, because when we were designing uniques, we kind of designed
Bello
them
GTA 6.
like in order from base type up, just literally because
Giovane.
that's the way that like spreadsheets are arranged. It's like we ended up with all the low level uniques
enough,
first,
fair
kind of
enough, yeah.
before the high ones, and it was kind of it's like we didn't see that mistake coming. Like it was kind of stupid because
thought
like
we thought we'd get
we
through
thought we'd
way
get through
more.
them all, right? We were like, okay, we'll get all the uniques, and so we designed them all. It's like, okay, we'll start working on the art, just go down the list. So then we're like, oh crap, now we don't have very many in-game uniques. So this time we're like, okay, we really need to make sure that in-game uniques are a thing. There's way more of them. So the focus really is on making sure there's lots of cool stuff to find. Lots of really chase things that you can get. It's not.
You discovered the sort order changing in the
Yeah,
spreadsheet.
that it does help. Turns out. But effectively, like you should. It should be a lot better, and like there's lots of cool stuff there.
And we're just gonna keep going with that.
yeah,
by the way,
of
like
course. Yeah.
100 now, 100 later, 100 next. Just keep going until well, kind of.
Anche per le rune nuove bisogna vedere se le greater effettivamente sono migliori dei
familiar with
soul
Path of
core,
Exile 1's history, is every
perché
single expansion
effettivamente i
since the
soul
Dawn of Time
core
has had
sembrerebbero
new uniques
comunque più
added to it.
potenti con la
So,
storia
there's
l'hype,
a lot there, and there's going to be a lot
lo
here
stacking
eventually as well. So, yeah.
So then
di
let's
tutte
talk
le
about
altre
the idea
varie
of like
risorse
players seeing
sembrerebbero
unique and be like,
sempre un po'
one
meglio
X,
delle
that's
greater,
not
però
very good. Where do you
vediamo.
guys? What do you guys want
Vediamo un
uniques to
po'
be in
come
Path of Exile
workano.
2? Like, how powerful should they be? What should they be aiming to do? And how should they affect the rares in that slot?
I mean, there's always a tension because we want rares to still matter. Like we don't want just your character to be just only full of uniques. So it really is like the role can evolve. So at the start of the game, they're really supposed to be more about that. So the earlier game uniques are supposed to do two things. One of them is when you find them, they should be powerful for a little while.
Yeah.
But then also they have a some kind of combo thing that you might be able to do with them at end game. But we don't always know exactly what that might be. Like, I mean, we've got sort of ideas, obviously, but it's like we don't necessarily design them to say, okay, this unique definitely has like an in-game build that's going to be actually strong to do with it, and that's because you're kind of putting in things where later on some other mechanic might come along or something might happen, and then people find an interesting interaction, and that's when the unique kind of comes into its own. And I mean that's the same as like Magic card design philosophy, that kind of stuff. You just put in like kind of weird stuff and sort of maybe
Yeah.
you find something. But obviously it can mean that like when people see a new unique, they might they dismiss it. But then one day they might also be paying vast amounts for it if it becomes a meta build. So but I feel like a game has to have that stuff in it in order to feel like there's lots of interesting ways to experiment, because it's like the feeling of being the first person to discover some new interaction is an amazing thing, and then when people see something that like feels smart, and it's like if we don't have uniques that just take chances and do weird shit, we'll never have that kind of stuff happen.
Yeah.
So
when we're designing a unique, we don't think about what's the value going to be.
Yeah.
We're not even coming out of it going like this is going to be really expensive or this is going to be really cheap.
well, in
Like,
some cases
that's-
Well,
yeah,
you knew what you were doing with that Herald unique.
Nah, I don't remember. It's more the charm.
Sembrano
that's the
due
thing,
bambini
aiming for
che
the-
giocano.
Honestly, there's someone said the other day, they were like, a successful unique is one that should be divisive. And I was like, I agree for the most part. But not every
Nervoni.
unique should fill that role. Some should just be clearly, this is powerful, I want it for sure. It
Yeah.
is going to be on my build.
chase.
And others are like, what can I do with this now? And then others are just like, we don't know if anyone's going to do anything with this, throw it in. And sometimes it doesn't get anything happen with it for 3 years.
But we don't know that necessarily. It's like, let's just take an experiment and throw it in there and let the players figure that out.
Yeah, I feel like you're with a lot of these uniques, you're designing a question. You're just like, I'm going to put something that's a little weird. Maybe someone will figure that out.
La
Well, I
Blood
think
Mage
Trish
io
called it
spero
as a
in un
puzzle
rework
piece, right?
perché
It's just a
se la
piece
paragoniamo
of the
alle altre
puzzle, you put it there,
Ascendancy
and maybe
all'inizio
someone
fa
will complete the
schifo.
puzzle or half of it, maybe not. And then others where it's just like, yeah, this is powerful. Like,
I mean,
have
there
it.
are definitely some chase uniques in this. In this
Yeah,
approach,
100%.
like, oh, definitely. Yeah.
So on chase uniques, then we've obviously had some like pretty crazy ones so far. Where do they want to be in terms of like how hard they are to get for players? Because at that point, you do need to consider like how expensive they end up being.
It's really tricky. So whenever we're looking, so if there's a unique that's broken, I guess there's two responses, right? One of them is make it rare enough that you only get the brokenness after the point when you're at the point where you're supposed to get that, right?
Yeah.
Which is to say, like, you know, post pinnacle boss type,
You win.
like a late level of character
Yes.
development, right? And then the other response would be nerf the actual unique, and it honestly is a case by case. Like, you know, so I think that like Temporalis, for example, actually got nerfed in both ways. The actual unique was nerfed a little bit, I believe, although I don't believe it's maybe as much as what players might expect. But then also you've got okay, whatever. But also we have made that one rarer.
It's still pretty crazy.
Oh,
in
it's
the
still
right
crazy
sense,
for sure,
yes.
for sure. But the thing is like you want to chase stuff, right? So therefore you don't want to just go nerfing everything into the ground the moment that it's good. So therefore that one becoming rarer, I think, was the right answer there, because it was way too common. Just due to the
We had also the issues with like.
Sì, è enorme la patch, sì.
Like,
È enorme,
I mean, there were three real
veramente.
issues. One is
Anche troppa
darkness at
roba.
one point bypassed honor loss, so all of a sudden a no-hit run. It wasn't a no-hit run.
Yeah.
You had guard
Tanto in
bypass,
generale io
honor
ricaricherò
loss, so once
la
again,
live
no-hit
poi
run's
su
not a
YouTube,
no-hit run.
ma
And
farò anche
then there
sicuramente
was
un
just
video
like, well,
di
how can
recap,
anything hit you
anche
if
se
you can
sarà
kill literally
dura
everything on your screen in one
recappare
frame, right?
tutta sta
So
roba, però
those three problems,
in
and
qualche
so
modo
as
si
the
fa
like
e
the balance issue of not everything
poi domani
things
sera
surviving
nella
for more than
live
one frame
appunto
due to a
dei
subset of
Dungeon
builds,
Rider
and those other
andremo
two
a
things go
rispulciare
away,
un
it
po' tutto.
becomes a lot rarer in
Purtroppo come ho
itself.
già detto le patch
And it
notice
is
non ci
much harder to
saranno
require
dopo
like very
questa
specific
live,
and ideally
ma
high skill
saranno
gameplay.
la prossima
And then
settimana,
there's just like, well, it
che
also
poi
was
era
just too
quello che ci
common, the relic
interessava anche
that
per
yielded it.
fare
I
un
mean, the
po' più di
expectation
theory
was that,
crafting, però
because this is a hard
questo è
challenge, most of the time when people try it, they fail. The
per
reality
il
is once
momento
you get the
questo è.
ability to do it, you just trade for that thing and get
Grande
it every time.
Klaus.
Yeah.
So that's kind of meant that the
Printing.
rarity
No, ti
kind of
vogliamo
didn't
rivedere
work like we thought,
su
and it
a
now
farmare
it's-
il Trial
it
of
should be
Chaos.
better in both ways.
Again, for the POE1 players comparison, like it was far more common than Original Sin, which was the same role in POE1's version of the Sanctum, just to give us some sort of comparison.
It's just much easier to actually reliably do it.
Yeah, and it shouldn't have been that much more common.
Right.
Yeah, gotcha. So crafting really surprised me. You guys announced, I thought we'd maybe get like one little thing, maybe you'd do something with essences or something, but we've got essences coming out a lot more, it looks like. You've got, because you're violent, you can
So
greater
greater essences are much
Trial
gonna
of
be much
Chaos
easier to get.
aggiungeranno
One thing we
altri
didn't mention in the
ascensori.
video is that like omens are way more common, because I believe you made a change. There's an omen in every
2.5 times more common, I think.
Yeah, than every thing. So like you've got stuff like that. Like we certainly knew that we needed to do more with what crafting stuff, and so we're kind of like, well, let's just make sure we're at least adding 3 or 4 things, like new things to. And,
Every ritual will now have at least one omen in the window.
Di
So you can
sicuro il
know
Soul
upon
Core
finishing your ritual, like, what's the
buggato
omen I'm gonna get, and
e
hope
ce
it's a
l'avrà
good one
sempre
that
sulle
maybe most
spalle
often it's
quando,
not, but,
But yeah, the greater
quando si
essences,
bugga
obviously, the Valorb thing
la
makes
prova.
it much more common. There's more sources of them with the map and everything like that. So that'll be happening more. And then, of course, there's the improvements to things like the runes. We've got higher level mods. that
Rogue
you can get from
Exile
them. There's like a
è
ton more
anche
runes. There's
interessante,
like, we just
molto,
wanted to expand the
perché
set.
se cominciamo a
and, having the
vedere
kind of like
dei rogue che appunto hanno
the
degli unici
niche
particolari,
mods that
potrebbero
you
essere
can
ad
get and
esempio
craft on things,
la
like
Ingenuity o la
just need more
Temporalis,
options.
chiaramente si sta
And,
parlando di roba,
yeah, it's sort of interesting because like
non so
some people
quanto
say, oh, you don't have
loro
crafting
pensano
in,
di introdurlo così,
in
cioè
POE2
se
because
un
we don't
Rogue
have a crafting
Exile
bench.
può
But it's like we
effettivamente
actually have a huge
avere
number of crafting options,
l'oggetto
and the crafting being good
che
kind of comes
droppa
down to like how many of these
un
kind of
pinnacle
weird
boss, in
systems are
questo
there
caso
and how they
appunto
can interact. But we just have to be really
l'Ingenuity, quindi
careful
droppata
because
dal King of the Mist, però se è
you don't
possibile,
want to get
ecco,
to the
comincia a
point
diventare
where
un
ground
farming
items no longer matter.
importante.
Like
Chiaramente
and I
ci si
think
aspetta dei
POE1 kind of
mob
basically did get to that point for various
veramente, cioè
reasons,
degli
where
elite
like people aren't
veramente
caring what's on
forti,
the
anche
ground nearly
perché
as much.
solitamente i
So
Rogue
we
Exile
still want to make sure with
in
every
Path of
change we're
Exile
making that
1
they still
erano
use the ground
belli,
stuff,
belli
they're still
tosti,
excited for
insomma,
things on the ground,
da
like
buttare
so
giù.
that's like a really careful
E
balancing
soprattutto
act
si
because they
ha
do
un
directly contravene each
un
other.
solo
Like
tentativo,
the better
perché se
stuff
si
you can
muore
craft,
durante
the
il
less
fight,
important the
appunto,
ground stuff is. So you
questi
kind
si
of it's a really
teletrasportano
sort
via,
of
l'hanno fatto
subtle
vedere
balancing act, but
anche nel
yeah, I
video.
think that the stuff we've added here will definitely push things in a way where you feel like there's more smart things that you can do to kind of improve your stuff.
Yeah, well, I think done right, and what you're doing is making sure that the ground items do matter with each of these crafting systems. So
exactly.
you had that fundamental change where you can't just turn an
Un'altra
item into a
carina che
white
non si
item.
l'ha inculata
Exactly, and that's
nessuno
very important.
è
One of the biggest ones, I think, and
l'Ascendancy
that kind of
nuova
then unlocks the
del,
ability to do more. And so the great thing about
del
the socketables
mercenario,
as a
la
crafting system
Blackguard,
is that they don't compromise the
la
ground at all
Blackguard,
because they don't, they're on top of the stuff that you can get on the
che
ground.
appunto hanno
So
fatto vedere
that's very good. But when it comes to the kind of the
che usa
base mods,
questi
we
totem
do want to
nuovi,
retain, like
quindi
that an
le
item has. We do
baliste.
want to retain for the most part the kind of thing of like that part of the item generation is random. It's just that it's just that on top of that you get the more deterministic things that you can add in addition to, and then when you do it that way it works really well. So socketables work really well as a crafting system for that reason.
Well, so on that topic, we've had this talking to you. It's like you're always saying to me that like this rune system is our crafting bench, but
Yes.
players don't keep asking for a bench anyway.
Right.
So obviously there's like a branding issue or a functionality
100%. So
gap
it
here.
is funny because I was actually saying the other day that like if we had literally had that system be identical, except that the way it was themed was that there's a crafting bench you go to and craft extra mods on the items, like which literally be functionally the same, I think, and required materials that are effectively the runes that you get. Like then I feel like people would be thinking that we've got a crafting bench. But yeah, ultimately that is that the rune system, the socketables are what replaced the crafting bench in the POE1 style crafting bench.
And I guess it must have also been like with that initial kind of output of them was just not as many options as
100%
what you
as
had
well. So that is
access
the issue,
to.
and that's because they were relatively late in development. So now we're just sort of expanding that, and we'll continue to add more socketables probably with every
Se
release, right? Like
Ingenuity
we'll add more
funziona su tutti e
categories of
tre
them,
gli
we'll do different things. It's
anelli
like expanding the
dell'Antres,
kind of type of mods because there is a thing where
aiuto.
it's the more like in the base mod pool for items, there can only be things that are really fundamental, and so anything that's kind of out there, we don't want to put in the base mod pool because then you end up with this sort of situation where you get items that got random shit you don't care about. Like the crafting
Yeah.
is where you want to have all of the kind of stuff that's like very build specific.
Yep.
And so adding more mods to that pool so that you can do that is the right idea.
Why is it that you can't socket and rune some things, like non-attack weapons, for example?
Well,
It was more just a choice for asymmetry where we just wanted
Yeah.
these things to feel different. There was also just like a little bit of a like, in the future, we'll add some system where we can do something else there. And so just not having everything be completely identical. Like, much like how, the quality on those weapons works differently, where it affects the skill as opposed to just, base damage.
I do think it is something that we should be probably looking into sooner rather than later, though.
Yeah.
Because,
Yeah, because the asymmetry things, it's good to have, like, not everything be super homogenous, but because we're talking about the importance of it being that extra layer of control over your items, which you just don't have if you're doing spellcaster.
Oh, maybe we'll add an Arcanist's bench and theme it that way for those
Okay,
ones.
all right. You forced my hand. I have to bring this up now. Can we get some sort of like cohesive, all-in-one bench for disenchanting, salvaging, selling for gold, Arcanist benching at endgame? I get in the campaign having these things be separate, but I like at endgame, it's so much clicky.
You're not
busy
happy
work.
enough with them just being next to each other, putting them next to each other, and you know.
No.
All right. Well, that's all right. I'll think about that one.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
I've planted the seeds at least.
Yeah. Okay.
Done my part.
All right.
There's ways.
Max, there's ways. I like the sounds of that.
Dai,
Well, at least for
crafting
endgame.
bench, dai,
Like,
dacci
yeah,
sta
that's
crafting
I
bench.
do.
Yeah.
I don't want the world to not feel like it makes sense.
Absolutely.
So,
But
Having it that you can just,
endgame,
like-
you've got your hideout where they're all
It would
like-
have to be a hideout related thing.
yeah.
That makes sense. I mean, people are putting their NPCs within each other's personal space anyway, so
Yeah.
the law goes out the window at that
Yeah,
point.
for sure.
So we've also got Fractured, crafted via an orb from the cleansed monsters. How rare are those?
how do you quantify rarity like that? They drop from the monsters. I can't remember the exact number, but like I think I was kind of saying like 1 per biome, which is the kind of total blob of cleansed monsters. But then that obviously does get affected by things like pack size and all that on top of that.
Yeah.
So is that
and
like
then,
5 maps or something?
Well, it depends on how many of them you kill as corrupted.
Yeah,
Because
so-
because the ones you
Yeah.
didn't cleanse while you were getting to the Nexus, those are the ones that then become cleansed. So you kind of have to choose, like when you go into a biome, am I going to beeline straight for the Nexus and then cleanse everything, or am I going to just fight them all as corrupted to get the rewards from that? So you're kind of choosing one reward or the other based on what you decide to run.
Okay, so you can kind of leave
Boh,
the
qui
Nexus
non
for
si è
last if
capito
you
tanto
want
bene
Yes,
la
if you wanna-
use
risposta.
it to try and
Ti
get
ha
more
detto
fractured orbs.
uno per
Oh no,
bioma,
it's the other way around.
Other way
So
around,
do,
yeah.
do Nexus first, then
Stavo
it
parlando
cleanses
dei
all the maps, and
fracturing
then now
orb.
you can get the most chance at fractured orbs, or you can fight them corrupted before going to the Nexus if you want to get the rewards that the corrupted maps have.
And we have like,
Ah.
for example, the corrupted bosses have their own uniques now.
Yeah, so you're gonna want that's gonna
There's a
you're gonna
bunch
be
of
wanting
new
those.
modifiers and
Yeah.
how they, so there's like
Yeah.
random corrupted strongbox kind of things and all of that
Clever.
stuff. So
Yeah.
you kind of really are like, I'm gonna, have a look at the mods.
Ok, gli
I
strongbox
this,
li
and
puoi
do
anche
this, then this, then this, then the
corrompere.
Nexus, and then I'm gonna do the rest cleansed.
Does the cleansed boss have its own uniques as well?
Not yet.
Not yet, okay.
It does have. It guarantees a fractured orb though as well.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
So you can
and-
get the boss.
So and you'll display if you hover over the map and it says like contains, I can't remember his name. Then you run it and kill it, you will get a fractured orb. So at least you will
yeah.
know that will drop one.
Yeah.
So,
I fracture
with
orb sono
fractured orbs being
garantiti
away
dai
fracturing, that's obviously
mostri
super
boss
powerful for
corrotti.
crafting. Are there any fractured items dropping pre-fractured? I quite liked that.
I think we went with no in the end.
Yeah,
we
not
were going to do
currently.
it, but then we decided not to. But we might do it later.
Yeah, so an extra add-on. Is there a particular reason for it or thought process for that?
There just kind of wasn't anything that really fit the.
Se è un
that
drop
exactly.
garantito, allora il
At some point
valore,
you'll want
diciamo,
some
non
new
è
thing to
Yeah,
go in
probably.
that,
diventa
like,
così altissimo.
Personally, I
Però,
would
boh,
rather just drop
vediamo.
more orbs.
Sembra un
Honestly,
po'
let people
strano nel
choose
drop
how they wanna
garantito,
use
tra
them.
l'altro, cioè, perché comunque
I like it from the
sono un
perspective of
crafting
drop values
veramente,
matter.
veramente
Like, when you're
Yeah,
seeing
but
a
they
rare
kind of
roba
already do. They kind
veramente
of do here
potente
anyway
ci viene
because
fuori.
because you need that as the thing of the fracture.
makes
So it's
sense.
kind of not necessary, I think. Yeah.
There's other little subtle things, like for example, the cleansed monsters within cleansed maps can't drop equipment as a little thing. So they have much higher. Obviously, they're dropping things more like waystones, tablets, currency. They don't get to drop any of the armor or anything. So they're more like currency sources. Is like an interesting
Yeah,
subtle
if
thing.
you want more currency, then play cleansed maps.
So we're going to have a lot more essences, a lot more omens, potentially ability to get fractured, recombination with the new, more accessible at low and mid tier
Design
recombination.
4.0. Yeah.
This is, yes, recombination's certainly undergone some changes. This is a huge, huge leap forwards compared to 0.1's crafting.
For sure.
So was it just about that you had to establish that really like humble baseline for crafting so that you could then go crazy with it like this?
Honestly, I mean, look, on some level, it can just be, like you need an economy. You need to see how things evolve. We just don't want to do too much at once. I mean, although this may seem like quite a lot. I mean,
It does, yeah.
but the thing is like, but in terms of the initial system, it's like if we'd have had all that at the start,
Yeah.
I think that we wouldn't have been like, we'll put it this way: it is hard to take the stuff away. So that's why we
Yeah.
have to be a little bit careful as we do this.
Yeah,
thing,
I guess
so.
you needed to kind of assess the fundamental things like the no scours, the no
Yeah,
ults
100%,
and stuff like
100%.
that as well, because
Yeah.
then you can have a better idea of how to build off that, which I'm super excited for. Crafting.
But
Yeah,
of course, and if
actual
you know
crafting.
us, like more, there'll be more. There's always going to be more.
Oh yeah.
so.
Oh, you gotta have a new craft for every league, right? That's how it is these days.
Oh, yes.
I expect a crafting system for every league. Thank
Yep,
you.
something like that.
That's somewhat actually our intention. So.
yeah.
I love it. Love it. Perfect. So let's talk about endgame then, because that had some humble origins as well with the initial implementation of POE2's endgame. Obviously trying some new things, being a bit experimental, not necessarily just wanting to copy POE1's endgame, but how far of your vision was 0.1's endgame? Was it what you want?
I would say that the main problem that we had is there wasn't enough overlapping axes of randomness, as we call them, where effectively you need to have it so that when you go into a map, there's just chances for random shit occurring, and then that random shit might happen
ridurre le
alongside some other
torri,
random shit,
secondo
and
me,
then the other
è
thing
una
together is like a
cosa
new scenario.
giusta
So I mean,
da
effectively,
fare.
like,
Squared.
yeah, exactly. Right? So,
E
so it's like if
soprattutto dare la
you look at what we
possibilità con
actually added here in
quell'oggetto che
terms of, like,
adesso ora mi
encounters, if you
sfugge il
will, whatever
nome,
that means to
però
you.
la
Like, we've
possibilità
added kind of
di
more than 40, probably
skippare,
something
diciamo,
approaching
dei
50
nodi
encounters.
della
That's if, like,
mappa e andare
if you count things like,
direttamente a un
each
nodo
rogue
più
exiles a
lontano.
separate one, and
Ecco,
each,
questa cosa
spirits
qui,
different one,
secondo
things
me,
like
è
that, right? So
fatta
those are
veramente bene.
the things.
È
But
giusto
the
che
big
abbiano
difference
fatto
between the
così.
ones we had before and the ones we have now is that most of these ones can overlap with other things. things. So you have a situation where you've got the Asmeri Wisp that like happens to infect the unique boss of the area, and then that leads to a combat situation that you haven't had to deal with before. Or then like you've got some essence thing that like or like, oh crap, that like this other wisp like caused the thing to turn into a boss that then it's just like it's all that stuff combining. Or like what happens when this goes with a with a unique strongbox, and it's like all that combining stuff, and that's what leads to the situation where you've got an exponential explosion of like possible combat situations, and then sometimes you just run into stuff that you've never seen before because of that, because of this combined in some interesting way. And that's something that definitely POE1 has got very well, because it's got so many of these things that have been added over time. And it's also something that we took care to make sure that each league specifically did. So what POE2 lacked was, I think, that. And so that will mean, I think, that the end game is overall just much more engaging. Now, obviously, we're going to be adding more content and more of the other stuff, but fundamentally, it's like it was specifically more of that type of stuff that we needed to do. And honestly, I don't think we've even got enough yet. Like, we want even more. We'll keep on adding that stuff, but it needed to become a focus. And I think part of the reason is that when we're first working on the end game, it's like we need to come up with the big ticket items, right? Like what are the the league things and like the maps, and we need to come up with all that stuff. And so it's the little detaily kind of things that kind of a little bit require a bit more like time and stuff to work on. Even though they're actually like relatively efficient to make. Like we can make a lot of them when we do actually sit down and design them, because they
Non c'è stato
making a new strong
nessun
box, like sure, it's like it's work, but it
accenno a
doesn't take like that long, if you know what I mean. But it
aumento,
is
diciamo, del drop
but it is that stuff that really adds all the flavor and
base,
kind of
diciamo.
interest. So we'll just be
Più
continuing to do that through
cose,
the
più
game. And I mean,
roba.
even
Sì, hanno
yesterday we were
detto, ad
having a
esempio, gli
conversation about
Omen
like
sono un po'
making
più
it so
comuni,
more of the maps, even just like regular
però non c'è
maps, have more
nessun...
interesting just little things that
Poi
happen in
vediamo
them
nelle
and stuff
patch
like that.
notes,
Like
purtroppo
more like
finché
what
non
the
abbiamo
campaign
appunto i
has.
numeri delle patch notes
We haven't like got there
non è
yet, but like
quantificabile.
through early access, we'll definitely be just like introducing more of those little details everywhere, so that you get the interesting things happening.
Yeah, so a bit like those exploration mechanics in campaigns.
100%, yeah,
could be a
exactly.
thing
That's just, we just want to make sure that you feel that same way through the in game as well.
And with the leagues as well.
Yeah.
And like, there's really only so much randomness that can occur within a breach in a map, and so they will end up feeling ultra repetitive. Whereas, and again, in POE1, you had the boss that could spawn occasionally. You had 5 different factions. Things like that. And it is very much our intention to expand on all the leagues, to have way more random things occurring, mini bosses spawning. Whatever else, I have a whole set. I don't want to spoil them all yet, because that's a whole later thing. But definitely want to expand on all that. Even Expedition only has the one boss. It had 4 in the predecessor. Like we need to get back to having all of that depth and all of combat and all of those mechanics, and it'll help hugely, while also making sure we're adding new ones, of course. But what we definitely have learned is that our minimum standard for new ones is going to it should include all of these things from the get-go.
Right.
Otherwise we're just signing ourselves up for like, here's 1,000 things we need to
I
improve.
drop comunque in generale,
to
se
actually get some of them
avete
finished. So
cominciato
that's
più
going to be a
tardi
goal going forward for sure.
a
I
vedere
think
la
it's like,
live
it is where our
o
type of
vi
design
siete persi
shines,
per
because like
vari
adding
motivi,
content is no longer
sono
a process of like
comunque li
we work on a
potete
thing and
sempre
then the players get to
riscattare
play, it gets into a
fino
situation where like
praticamente
adding
a
content is more value than just the
svariate
content
ore
itself,
dopo la
because it
fine
adds to
della
everything else
live,
too.
quindi
And so that kind of
nel
makes it
caso
feel like the
vi
world
potete
gets like
connettere ad
larger
altri
in
stream
much larger proportion
poi
than what
dopo
we have. And so
successivi
like
e
it's an n
ottenere
squared thing,
comunque il
where like
drop.
the square of all the stuff we add. So that, like basically it'll feel like it's ramping up in terms of interest as we add more content, rather than just feeling like you're just continuing like rather than every league feeling like you just add the same amount. It'll feel like it gets even bigger each time.
Yeah, like when you add Asmeri Wisps, that's not just about adding that. It interacts with all the other things that already exist that it can go ahead and affect. So that's tackling one of the, ultimately, I think the biggest things is just that like the core basic mapping of running an empty map was boring, and that's never what you want to be, obviously.
Yeah, we usually get it.
So like some of the issues there, I guess, as well, that were exacerbated by that problem was the fact that the maps were so big and that there were so many of them. Obviously, that's getting a lot better with the maps themselves becoming much more interesting. But it seems like this corruption and cleansing mechanic is breaking up and giving you something to progress through as you move towards the next tower or next boss or next other mechanic. I mean, I guess there's always something on your screen that you're pushing towards, it looks like.
Well, we want to try and honestly, I don't even think we're even quite there yet. Like, we really want to make it so that you feel like there's lots of quests, as it were, in endgame. Like, not necessarily directly in the form of like, here is a quest objective, but like
Yeah.
that you sort of have this feeling of like, yeah, there's like different stuff that you're like that
there's
you
a
feel
thing.
like, oh, there's a thing, you know, like
Yeah.
yeah, exactly, right. You need to ideally, like, every time you do one of those, it's like there's another one just on the horizon
Exactly.
that
Yeah.
you're thinking about. So yeah, if we can achieve that, then we'll have succeeded. But yeah, it'll need to keep adding stuff, right? Like, just more and more things, because obviously, you know, you need to have enough just core there to be able to get to the point of it doesn't feel like you're just repeating the same thing over and over again as well.
It seemed like this like explorable world map thing that you did for Endgame, being like looking like a physical actual map, was really wanting us to explore, but that wasn't really much of that. So you kind of
Well, I mean, ideally we can. As I said, it's just about content really at that point. You know, you just
Yeah.
need to add more and more, and we'll keep on adding more. And this
We'll
this
100% get more. Of it.
yeah, and 0 to 0 I think goes a long way to improving that for sure.
So with the corruption mechanic now, you're going to see some corruption on the map, and you're going to want to go there because it's a system that you
Yeah,
can
yep,
interact with.
exactly.
And it's your skill points.
Yes.
Yes.
So you're unlocking skill points from that, which means you're unlocking more of the Atlas
So
tree earlier on.
Your first Nexus, you have to run at a tier 1 map, and it will
Great.
drop 2 skill points. It'll give you your first two skill points.
Awesome.
And then you're like, all right, where's my next Nexus? That's where I'm going for my next 2. And then your next one, and you have to do them 1 tier higher every time. So the second one you got to do at tier 2 to get your skill points and so on and so forth.
It's
And
not just
that's it.
it's not just grind 10 maps.
Yeah, that was terrible.
good. I love it.
So yeah, it is very much like, let's go and clear these corrupted Nexus, and then it's like, well, and there's the whole mechanic around it. But yeah, if you want to just like I want to get my points as fast as possible, just go Nexus to Nexus to Nexus and get as many as you can. If you're like, oh, I can't see any Nexus, maybe go to a tower to reveal more, and then, you know, which you're doing way less frequently, mind you, thank goodness.
Yes.
But yeah, it's a lot more objective driven as opposed to just, again, random grind and random exploration. There's at least, and you should be seeing a pretty decent chunk of unique maps.
I was going to ask, yeah.
I call them
It's
unique
funny, yeah,
maps.
it's funny because I was pointing out to Matt the other day that the distinction between a unique map and a normal, like, there is no distinction anymore. We shouldn't even look at it that way. Like, it should be that every map is like unique in some sense.
There's not a unique
You know,
map
there's not a
system.
unique
We have
map.
an
Yeah, exactly.
we do have an icon for it because they are kind of in a different echelon.
Yeah.
But yes, technically, unique map is a name that's a holdover from POE1.
Yeah, because they can you can
Yeah.
use
Tante
mods,
mappe nuove
put them
anche lì, nel
wastelands
senso
anyway, so it
proprio
doesn't- there's no actual reason
layout
for a unique map to be any
delle
different from a normal
mappe,
one.
delle
craft
It's just,
ambientazioni.
it really just
Juice
it really
Non
just
si è
comes down to how rare
parlato
they are
di-
relative to other things, right? So,
And how rare are they? How,
del
like,
rework
I mean,
magari di alcune mappe particolarmente tediose come Val
maybe
Factory,
in
in
so hard to
terms of
explain.
player screen.
yeah, I mean, look,
Stretti
as I said, I
di
think
voi.
that
Screens.
How many? I had the numbers, I just don't remember them.
well, I mean, as I said, they should be common enough that you feel like there's always some kind of objective you're excited
Yeah,
about on the screen,
it
right?
honestly more common than I was initially comfortable with, and then after trying it, I was like, okay, actually, this is like,
Yeah.
this is reasonable. So
Yeah, I feel like you initially probably want them to be common enough that you're like almost getting tired of those map layouts, so then you're incentivized to add more.
The good thing is, by the way, by adding more here, we didn't just keep them the same commonality as the 2 that existed.
Yep.
Like they are just more common. It's not like the reason. Part of the reason it wasn't as common before is because there was only 2, and
Yep.
that would have just been repetitive and boring. One of the other restrictions is that like the Vault of Kamasa was restricted to the Val City biome, so to speak, and that was one of the Citadel biomes. That's like one of the rarest and latest, you know?
Yes.
So it's like, we've not only made that more common within that biome, but a lot of the new ones, in fact, all of the new ones aren't restricted to those city biomes, and thus they are appearing more frequently. And some of them are like, oh, you want deserts because they give you the essence map, or you want the mountain because they can give you this and that, you know? So like, ideally there's a little bit of just like, you see the edge of a desert and you're like, oh my God, please.
Yes. Okay. So that's what I was going to say. This like idea of exploration is like I felt there needed to be something biomes where like you're actually pushing into a biome because there's that one node that like affected your drops slightly, but obviously that's not much.
The one that was the Shattered Lakes, for example, as you can probably imagine, only spawns in the water biome. And so there's a little bit of like, you know, and so does Untainted Paradise, and so does one other. So there are actually 3 special maps that can spawn only in the water.
Good.
So go to the water.
And otherwise, how easy is it to find? You said there was an icon. Obviously, you kind of have an idea of what biomes. Is it like
Tre
also something that's
mappe
pretty visually
uniche
Oh, there's
possono
spottable on the map?
spawnare,
so
diciamo,
when we looked at
vicino ai
when we looked
biomi
at with the megaliths,
dell'acqua.
which had all the storm and lightning, well, on the map it has a bunch of storm and lightning.
Cool.
So yes.
That's awesome. Cute. That's great. So we mentioned
Non ho
the Atlas
fatto il
passive
barista,
tree,
ma
and
il
you're
ristoratore
seemingly,
sì.
I think you're getting better progression of that. But definitely an issue I had with it personally was that it felt very top heavy, both for the core one and also for especially for the league mechanics, where like the league mechanics you don't get points until you kill the bosses, which to me feels like the end of it for most players.
That kind of was the original pitch of that, and I wouldn't say that's really changing here, but there is more we want to do with that, and I think that it could be made better, but 0-2 isn't getting a change there to that side. But in terms of the actual core Atlas, it definitely is. You know, like you're getting that earlier, there's more, it's a bigger tree, there's more interesting stuff.
There's subtle changes to getting them in the sense that, like, for example, the difficulty 0 pinnacle bosses are way lower life.
Well, that's actually
now.
good. That's actually a very good point. So yes, difficulty 0 is now like half the life that it had before, and so that's like a pretty
But
substantial
difficulty
change.
4 is currently the same
Yeah.
as what it was before. So it's same top end, but like easy, more accessible for more people at the bottom end.
Right.
And then also because of like, you know, due to the reliquary key working the way it does, all pinnacle bosses can drop all uniques at all difficulties, except they are like substantially less common at difficulty 0, but you feel way less bad for running them at that
qui
point
stanno
now.
dicendo appunto dei
So again, it's just opening that
pinnacle
up to a lot
boss,
more people to
quindi la
farm, and
possibilità
it's not so
appunto di
much
non
dependent on if
perdere
you build hard in
l'esperienza
difficulty
se
4,
si
you're not
muore.
really a viable character kind of
C'è la possibilità
mindset.
sicuro
much more
al
easy
fatto che
onboarding
se si
for
muore durante il
those.
pinnacle
Which will
boss
give you your
non si
first
perde
sets of points
esperienza più.
certainly a lot easier now. That being said, not if you're playing the most broken build of all time, because you're probably nerfed into the ground, let's be real. So with your new build, we'll have to see how that balance goes.
With their new broken build.
Yeah,
that's
well,
sure.
yeah, one of those
New
specters.
builds,
Diciamo,
Anyway,
Parietto simpatico
the
ha detto
ultimate
che
point
tante
being,
build
yeah,
rotte saranno
you're-
nerfate.
you're certainly going to get those initial set of points easier than before. However, you are right that something isn't quite right there still, and I do need to kind of explore.
We are going to do more with this like later. We've talked about this issue, but we didn't have time to do anything about it in 0-2
Secondo
as
me,
much. But
parere oggi
certainly
un
by the end of
po',
early access,
po'
I think
random,
that
ma
that
è
system will
probabile
probably look
Part
le
of it also,
stat
as we talked
sager
about before, adding
build,
those extra bits
le
of
build
content
quelle
to
con
the
le
leagues will help give
interazioni
more
tipo
interest
quasi
to
infinite
the
delle
trees and
comete,
more nodes we
e
can
quindi
add to
custom
actually invest
crit,
into. Because
tutte
if
quelle
you think
abilità
about a
lì,
breach,
secondo me riceveranno
there's only so much
sicuramente
you
dei
can actually
nerf
modify right now.
importanti.
Right?
Magari non le
There's a level of
distruggeranno
radius,
completamente,
speed,
ma le
density of
nerferanno
monsters, and like sure, there's the standard stuff with
di un bel
monsters, but like
pezzo.
you can only go so far when you don't have all of that depth of different factions and different bosses and different mini bosses and different, you know, itemizations or additional things with, you know, catalysts and whatnot. Like you are quite limited in how expansive a tree can be, and so it'd be nice to get those things in and also kind of look at the trees at the same time and reevaluate how that works, just so we can have them be more interesting while we're at it.
Right.
But yeah.
And now with the pinnacle bosses, if you're like halfway through a level, you don't need to. Oh, maybe I'll do that when I get the rest of the level now.
Yes, that was a good change. So yeah, as he was saying, as you were saying, you no longer gain experience or lose experience anymore from Pinnacles, so you could just feel free to do them anytime. Yeah, I think that's just a straight up upgrade, and I think that, you know, it's not like you were playing Pinnacle bosses for experience.
No.
So yeah, it does the downside is not an issue.
Beh,
Really.
vogliono rendere i pinnacle
It also
boss
is a
più,
nice thing of
diciamo,
really just keeping,
appetibili
like,
da
if we add
farmare.
more leagues, for example, and we end up with a Domain of Timeless Conflict problem, where it's
Più o
just like
meno.
rotations to level to max level, like ultra,
Yes,
ultra
we
quick.
don't want that type of
Like,
content to
at
be the
least
way you
now
level.
we can say, like,
Yeah.
maps are the way you level. Like,
Yeah,
that is
yeah.
what you're doing. And sure, you might get some sort of unique map rotation here, and, you know, maybe not. I don't know. Depends. But hopefully we can avoid that. But either way, like, it's just really you're playing in maps to level, and that's what you're doing.
It's
and there's
not,
something
that's not
nice about
itemized
that.
content, right?
At
though?
least,
It's
at,
not something
at
new.
least until we've added Delve.
Well, sure. I mean, there will be future parallel in-game systems.
Confirmed.
Yeah, no.
I know you want to do something like
Yes,
Delve.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
You're a fan. You're a fan. I mean, you made the end game look like Delve, so.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's been a long-term problem, and one we need to properly apply to the other game as well. That the whole like can't do my content because I got a level, and I'm like, even if you're only like 15% in, you're like, oh.
Yeah. It's just not as bad.
Yeah.
It's just not as bad in POE1 because the leveling is faster.
Yeah, it's
so
true.
it hasn't been on our radar as much.
Bah, qui
So,
hanno detto che
speaking of,
appunto, vabbè, la
map
perdita
progression,
dell'esperienza,
there's
sempre
been
la
some
solita
fundamental
storia,
changes there. You're
che
telling me
tanti si
that,
lamentano, ma loro non
now
la
you can
vogliono
no longer drop
rimuovere,
maps below your
però
current
loro
level
ti
of
stanno
map.
dicendo,
It's
ma
correct.
impara
So
il
yes,
2 e si livella
you
più
no longer
veloce.
get if you're playing, you know, a T5 map.
Ma,
you're only
sì e
going to get
no, perché quando si
T5
arriva
maps,
comunque a
or
livelli
if there's
alti,
a boss there, a
alti,
T6 map.
insomma,
But we've also
esperienza bisogna
smoothed the way
farne
the whole
tanta,
progression
tanta.
works. So we've actually
Non lo so.
the map drops are way less random now entirely. When you kill the last rare in a map, that has a it can affect it. at T1, that was a 100% chance to drop another map of the same tier. And then as you go up the tiers, you can still sustain that using Waystone chance. So effectively, it's de-randomized that a lot. And then there are several ways that you can get upgrades. So in terms of like going up the tiers. So one of them is that when you kill a boss, that's a guaranteed +1 upgrade. Then of course you can still cube them up, 3 to 1 recipe to go up a level, or you can run it corrupted. And if you're running a corrupted map, then because it drops the same tier, that's like a sort of guaranteed. When I say corrupted, I mean the one that
Varlorb corrupting up
+1. That lets you do the run them the same level as well. So you've kind of got those 3 options, but it's much more intentional now. It's like if you're going up maps, it's like you're deciding, okay, this is a thing I am doing. You don't just kind of have that like it doesn't just happen. So it's kind of supposed to make the jump like. If you're just looking to sustain, you can do that, pretty much guaranteed. And unless you're dying more than the number of times you've got portals, which is obviously the thing now. Now that you can go through portals again, the sustain is going to be a lot easier if you are dying.
Yeah.
But then it's like once you've achieved that, it's like you effectively can sustain forever. Like the cases where people just drop off the bottom and have issues should be like way less common.
Ultimately, it's way less random, way more deterministic. And ultimately you can, as long as you are able to do the not die all the time, you will sustain that tier forever.
Right.
Assuming you can roll enough, that high enough mod count, and there is a boss here. I'm going to go up a tier.
Yeah.
And you go for the boss, you kill the boss, you go up a tier.
And if you
and then you sustain that tier forever as long as you can do the difficulty. It's
and
just very clean.
And if you're adding more mods, which you do need to be doing to continue to maintain 100%. Ability to go up tiers, then and if you're doing that early, you're getting more maps than what other people are getting, which means you can do the cubing as well. Like,
Vabbè,
it's
qui
just kind
non
of
è
like
che
it's
sia
sort of
tanto
just much
d'accordo
more
con quello che stavo
effectively gets
dicendo.
the
Loro ti
the
dicono
thing
che
where
comunque una
good
volta
players
riesci a
can advance at
sostenere
the
un
right speed,
determinato tier
normal
delle
players
mappe, puoi
don't fall off the
aggiungere i
bottom of the
mod,
curve. It kind of solves
modificatori
all
delle
those
mappe,
issues like without. But
però
also you're not
alcuni
going to have just like
modificatori
hordes of
spaccano
low-level
determinate build,
waystones that
quindi
you
anche
don't
lì
need
in realtà non
as
è
well.
proprio
So
così, è un
and
discorsone,
there are
però
still you
sì,
can
ci
get to the
sta.
highest tiers relatively quickly. You have to prove you're good enough, your character's good enough, but if you're doing it, you get there, right?
Comunque il
It's
filo
pretty
del
quick,
discorso è
and you can take it at
fondamentalmente
your own leisure as
aggiungendo
well, and that's
portali, quindi
completely
avendo
fine. So it's
comunque
not
più
like, oh, we've
possibilità
made it
anche
way
nelle
longer
mappe,
to get to
perché
tier
abbiamo visto che
15, like none
comunque
of that
adesso
is really the case.
nelle
It's just
mappe
that
si
before
hanno
you could
più
luck into
portali,
getting to
quindi
tier
più
15 quickly,
tentativi,
with
addirittura al
some level
boss,
of,
se non
bias
sbaglio,
and
però
luck, of
questa cosa va
course.
rivista un attimo,
Or you could
al
just be
boss
like, what the heck, I'm like
finale
constantly running
delle
out, I have a really
mappe
bad time, and so
abbiamo
now it's just way
più
more like
possibilità
predictable
di
and
farle, però ecco,
honestly, it
chiaramente rimane
probably
la
has way
penalità
more of an
all'esperienza,
impact
quindi
on the
morire anche
sustain
2, 3, 4
problem, which we
volte
didn't really,
nello stesso
which we
boss
talked
comunque
about,
ti fa
which is the
perdere
respawning. I would
un bel
argue
pezzo
this
di
thing has
esperienza.
like way more impact on map
Quindi
sustain than the
insomma diciamo
respawning
che
does.
non è che sia cambiato tanto,
I
hai
mean,
più
obviously they're paired,
tentativi,
and they
You
però
relate
need
to
both
each
bisogna
other.
stare
because
sempre attenti alla
because
perdita chiaramente dell'esperienza.
the guaranteed drop comes from the final rare. So if you were just dying, you would never get it. So the respawning is necessary in order to make it so that that's going to happen for players who like and obviously as it gets more difficult, and you get less portals, you start to get to the point where you're going to run into trouble. But if you're a good player, you should be able to get up into the top and sustain very well.
Yep.
You mentioned the idea of maps dropping magic by default.
Yes.
Is that something you're still doing, or?
I believe it is. But no, actually, wait. But there wasn't a concern about that, which I wanted to talk to you
Alps.
about later.
Okay,
which
well,
is
maybe
that-
maybe not.
Yeah, we'll talk about that later because a concern was raised that I think is valid. So yeah, we were going to make it so that maps drop magic and above, but there might be issues, so we'll discuss that later on.
Well,
Non-decided.
Yeah,
undecided. Yeah.
Undecided, yeah.
You thought it was decided. I just
Got a week left.
Yeah, we've got a week left. It's fine.
Still figuring. It sounds like much more deterministic progression
But
if
yes,
you're
that's
able
the
to
main
prove
thing.
the power that you have.
That's the
Well,
main
it
thing.
just should be, am I strong enough to do this? Yes, I can do it.
Right.
Not, am I lucky enough to do this, and
Yeah.
am I strong enough to do this?
Great.
One of those axes, get out of here.
Love it. So we've got rogue exiles populating the maps now. How common are these guys, especially with unique, since you get their unique guaranteed? I love that. The whole-
It's 1 in 8%, 1 in 12.5 to start with, but of course Atlas Tree be Atlas Tree. So you can speak into that. And
Is there like a map modifier
Rogue
for that
Exile?
or something to guarantee it? Or something
there
like that?
are, I think in this case this one is the exception, whereas that you can get normally guaranteed of the other things. We wanted the exiles to be one that you can't just guarantee all the time.
They don't always have uniques.
Yeah.
But when they do, they're using them. The AI is very cool, like how it works.
I mean,
So
they
it
can
looks
have
nice.
0, 1, 2. I mean,
Yeah.
No,
There's nothing
ok,
stopping
i
them
Rogue
from
Exile
having uniques
non
every
hanno
slot.
sempre dei
but like, it is.
There's a chance that would be.
It is
incredibly low.
absurdly rare.
I assume it's
Yeah.
just roll per slot, basically, right?
Yeah, it is
Yeah,
roll
it's
per
roll per
slot,
slot.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
But
So
you
we're talking
might have a
like
line of just,
fraction of a fraction of a percent
Yeah,
for like
exactly.
all of them, but still like 5 or something like that. Yeah.
it can happen.
But they have quite a lot, like, because they're a player, the assumption is that their other gear is also relatively
Anche
good,
bisogna
so they do
vedere se
generally
non
drop
hanno gli
more
unici,
bias towards
forse
dropping higher tier
hanno
rares
delle
and stuff like that.
Yeah,
nuove,
they're doing that like full
cioè
set of
delle
items
armi
because
rare,
good player.
oggetti
Cool, I like
rari,
that. I always love
forse
that whole thing.
niente.
Yeah, I feel like it's even more
Qualcosa.
important here in POE2, so
Right.
that's awesome. But just some of those will be uniques, maybe.
We wanted them to be less common than the other content, but like way more exhilarating when you find them.
Yeah.
But of course, again, you can speak into them at the cost of other things. That's your choice.
Cool. Is there going to be some sort of like warning that they're coming, or are you going to know they're in the map ahead of time, or are you just going to get ambushed by these guys? Leaf slaying from off
You
screen?
won't know they're in the map ahead of time, much like anything random you run into.
But they talk though, and they'll say something before they.
They monologue before they murder
They
you.
do.
Don't know if I'd go to quite the level of
Again,
monologue.
when I said
but
some,
sure.
when I said some insult you, I'm not joking. Like some do literally insult you, and I believe one of the monks is a pacifist, and he's like, I don't want to do this. Don't force my hand. He'll do it anyway. But,
I'm not.
Yeah.
You're just like running away.
Yeah,
It's like,
exactly.
don't make me
Don't
do
force my
this.
hand. Yeah, exactly.
well, look, you can just run away. You know, I really like the here's an occasional spike in difficulty, and again, it's important that they are relatively rare for that reason as well. But I do want it to be when you find one, you are very excited to kill it,
sembrerebbero
and of
comunque
course, even though they
incontri
portal out,
abbastanza
you still have
difficili.
your number of portals you have. So unless you're running like a full 6 modded Waystone, just get back in there, and he's gone, but or whatever, you've lost your uniques or non-uniques, whatever they had, but either way, just move on, you know?
I mean,
Ok,
you guys
quindi
were somewhat
sì, o
forgiving
hanno
with this. You
degli
didn't make it so
unici
that they take
addosso
your
o dei
items.
non unici,
Yes,
degli
that would've been
oggetti
good.
diciamo
That's an
rari,
event at
Don't-
some
don't-
point.
don't
normali,
do that
tra
idea.
virgolette.
That's maybe a 1 week event or something in the future.
Be
And it's
pretty
like,
easy to do.
just take one of your items. And then you got a nemesis system where you can find them and try and get it back in the future.
You need to add the Tame Rogue Exile gem.
I don't tame's the right word.
Higher
Higher
exile.
exile.
You run up and you can quickly be like, take $1 million gold.
Just give me a little snack. Like, yeah, you want to follow me?
I mean, to be fair, that would be a fun system.
It actually would. That's actually not a bad
Running
idea.
up and just being like, hey, I'm here, give me 100,000
Oh.
gold and I'll be your ally. Is kind of,
I know you've
Come
tinkered with the idea of a hireling system at points in the
well,
past, so now you've got your mercenary hireling system, right? Rogue Exiles. They recruit the one with good uniques.
We'll see. We'll see.
Going down a little bit of a rabbit hole here.
Yeah.
So we did have some League mechanics come over from Path of Exile 1 to Path of Exile 2. You're going to be looking to port more over. Are you going to be doing some unique ones that we haven't seen before?
I mean, we're definitely going to be doing more unique ones that are, that are just completely different outside of what we've done in POE1. Absolutely. But I mean, I think that like sort of the hope in the long term is that each, like, as we kind of get, past the end of early access and as we're sort of, just going out, that each time we do something, we're both adding a completely new League mechanic, but also potentially bring something back as well, kind of like as another additional kind of like, here's another fun thing. So that's probably sort of what I imagine will happen. But it kind of really is case by case. Like some things we don't want to bring back, some things we do, like, and my opinion can change on a dime as well. Like if someone suggests like a new way to interpret something, then I might be like, oh, actually that is great. So, it honestly, people assume that we have a full plan of literally everything, but it's like in reality, it's like it's very much responsive to like what's happening and like the actual plan relates to the things that like are definitely happening. Right? You're talking acts, you're talking classes, you're talking like all that stuff is like definitely like that's happening. It takes a long time to produce. It sort of happens in the background. You've got outsources, armies of people kind of working on that stuff, and then all the kind of like more incidentally stuff is very much like, oh, let's do something cool, let's just make this, what if we do this, and we don't have a I don't have a plan for the next 12 strong boxes. It's just just come up with an idea and like that's cool. Just a fun little project for a designer to work on.
How do you feel like some of the ones that were, I felt somewhat definitively part of Exile 1 in terms of clear speed, like Breach, for example, have settled into PoE2? Do you feel like they're in a good spot, or were they a good idea to bring over to the game?
Insomma,
I think Breach is. I mean,
io
Breach,
credo
Breach
che
is
andrò
fun, right? I certainly
minion
wouldn't want to remove it.
stranamente.
I don't know
con gli
about like. I mean,
Spettri.
there's probably been some balance changes.
I
To
mean,
it
it was
a little bit.
spawning too many
It has,
monsters,
it
so
has.
let's just say
Ci saranno
that
sicuramente
without a
degli
doubt.
unici
Yeah.
legati ai
POE2
minion,
standards,
agli
yeah.
spettri,
It's
sicuramente.
like currently on POE2, it's just too out of control. It just needs to chill. There was a little bit of an assumption made where it was just like,
Forse sarà
well,
anche
you'll get
possibile
overwhelmed
fare
by
una
monsters and
build
it's more a matter of
proprio
survive as long as you
full
can. And then, of
Spectres.
course, because you get self-propagating
Possibile,
hero
vediamo.
builds that are just literally can kill anything.
Which, by the
Non
way, heroes don't
sappiamo
self-propagate
se la gemma
anymore.
Spettri
Just-
sarà
Just get that
una
out of the
sola,
way
nel
right
senso
now.
se ci
Power of the
saranno
card
altre
just kind of
tipologie di
distorted the
minion,
league
diciamo, nuovi,
balance in a
però
way where it's like
vediamo,
we have to
stiamo a vedere.
make some changes. So
Però anche la
like, it's
Huntress
coming down a bit.
sembrerebbe
saw one coming.
molto molto
Yeah, well,
interessante,
100%. I mean, look, there's a lot
soprattutto
of things people say they
l'ascendancy
saw coming, but
della
it
mazza.
certainly does end up being the case
Però
that like the
sono
patch
tutte e
notes
tre
are,
abbastanza
so by the way, we aren't
forti, interessanti. C'è
releasing
quella
them at the end of this
appunto
live stream.
che
We're going to
aggiunge
be
l'anello
releasing
in
them next
più,
week.
c'è quella
But
che
they
ruba
are
i
going to feel like a bit of a
modificatori
nerf fest for
dei
sure, because like there's a lot of things that needed
che
to be
ruba i
done.
modificatori
Let's
degli
talk
elite
balance.
dei
So,
cibi,
all right.
my
Settle in.
expectations
ritualista.
and anticipations are that this first one is going to be an absolute wrecking
Ce n'è
ball
per
of chaos
tutti i
and carnage
gusti.
and see where things land.
Yeah.
But then maybe over time it'll become a sledgehammer and then like a fine carpenter hammer.
Sure, that definitely should be the case.
As I said earlier, it's like 10,000 things will change this time. 5,000 things will change next time. Then hopefully we can halve it every single time.
People should really be going in with the expectation that like nothing they knew about how the game was balanced before is the
Forget
same. Just
everything
forget everything you know. Like, you know, exactly. So basically we'll that kind of just means that like, you know, everyone who's finding builds, like do it again. Like you are going to find more shit that is like outrageously broken again, but it is not going to be the same shit that was broken before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Attribute stacking, get out of here.
Yeah, exactly. yeah. So I mean, it's the hope is though that yes, you're right. It'll stabilize to the point, like I it will take time, but we will get to the point where we no longer have things that are easy to become outrageous with. Right, like the idea is like it shouldn't be that you can just slap a combination of supports together and then like you're just like destroying pinnacles in 14 seconds. You know. That
14's a long time.
yeah, okay, sure. But
You mean 14? That sounds like terrible.
Yeah,
builds. That's not
exactly.
even on POE.
yeah, no,
Ninja.
but that's what I'm saying is with no items, right? But anyway, so the point is that like the first time you fight a pinnacle, it should be a bit of a fight. But then of course you do get.
Ok, buffera tutto.
Nuovo Knorr Asia Noodles. Knorr Asia Noodles. Easy to love.
A number of like damage / how fast you kill a pinnacle boss.
Yeah.
That you're aiming for, and then how much players can exceed that, and you're like,
Yeah. So it really should be that you're not killing, as I said, not killing pinnacle bosses that fast at the moment. Like a good sort of benchmark for like just a guy walks in and like has kind of got something that's like not stupid, but also like not like doing something, you know, like not crazy. And we kind of imagine that they should have about 50k DPS doing something like that. But at the same time, anything up to 500k DPS is
10 times
you know is
fine.
also okay. And well, that'll take you from taking a 3-minute fight down to like a 20-second fight. Like, you know, that's your range of like potentially acceptable kind of things going on. But if you're doing above that, then you're in like we're probably going to nerf you territory at some point. So that's kind of like the thing. Now it's worth mentioning that like we've lowered like the life of pinnacle bosses to get that to be right, and sort of things like the difference between a T15 boss and a pinnacle boss was just way too much. So that has been that's been sorted out. Like it's things like that we just need to sort of get things in the right place here. So that's a sort of expectation. Now obviously people are going to still find ways to get 10 million DPS somehow, I'm sure, even though we're like nerfing many things. But the thing I think that when we're talking about nerfs and how we want to do, my key thing that I want to try and achieve always is that whenever we're nerfing something, we're only nerfing the thing that was particularly like we're nerfing as little as possible to make it so that the average Joe who works in and just tries to do stuff is not getting affected by it.
Yeah.
Like it should only be the like ridiculously broken synergy thing that kind of like has some way of dealing with it that's that's actually affected by this. And I'm struggling to think of an example off the top of my head. Maybe you've got some of like a way that a targeted nerf that kind of like.
I mean, like say lightning conduit. You're not gonna reduce the base damage of it because someone's able to hit for 150 million with one hit from it. Like that comes from the compounding, like top end levels of exposure, stacking, conductivity, and more so shock effect. Right, so it's more about like take away from the shock effect scaling side of things there and increase the base damage even, do changes like that where it's like for an average person it's now better, and for someone who is absolutely abusing's not the right word because like they're doing the right thing technically by their standards, that are using all those extreme factors, bring those down a little bit, keep those regulated, and like it'll increase the average user's experience while narrowing, bringing this down and bringing this ideally up a little bit in a lot of cases.
I like the idea that I felt it's somewhat reassuring to hear that there was actually kind of like a math here. Like ultimately you're saying bosses have X amount of hit points. It has 500k hit points. And so we expect players around 50. Yes. Right. So that's a clear number. Like we know that. Oh yeah, and we're okay with you killing that like 10 times faster than we expect. Right. But it's when you get it down to 1 second.
Exactly.
Then we're
10 times is fine, right?
And the problem with the more DPS you have, it is now I have to dodge less.
Yeah.
I get more crowd control.
There's a snowball.
It is. It really is. So you're always going to be incentivized to do that, and you get to this weird thing where now it's just like. Okay, well, I think you, after a while, was like, I haven't actually seen a pinnacle boss fight that lasted more than 2 seconds.
That was really sad to me. Probably the saddest thing about the early access launch to me was seeing the first pinnacle boss fight, and it just like, and it's like, it's like nobody had to care about the mechanics. The first time
it was so many skills.
Exactly, right? Like there were so many skills and all these things, and it's like none of it mattered. It's like that's sad.
Yeah.
We ideally was in a situation. Now I hope that doesn't happen again, but honestly, it's probably wishful thinking.
As I said, 10,000 things before, there's still going to be
there's still going to be more, and it will happen every time. And people will find stuff,
look, this again by the end of early access, I want to say we're going to be in a real
fondamentalmente non vorrebbero
that is not going to have
siano fight troppo
so much abusive stuff, and
corti,
getting rid of that whole, I feel like I have to
pinnacle
play
boss.
It is that very 100%. Demoralizing to players when they play their thing, and all of a sudden something comes out and they're like,
in
and so
generale.
the way you will know that we're successful is because you get more diversity in classes, because it means that there's no longer the thing that everyone has to play because it's easy to be
I mean, you definitely saw that where it's like the comments of any build guide, it's like, oh, another Archmage build, or
exactly.
It's just Heralds again.
Exactly.
It's like, this isn't even a build, this is just Herald again.
You go look at like, what are all crossbow people playing? And crossbows is actually the least used weapon type, and so you specifically start there and you're like, okay, well, here's how much people are using these skills. Oh, Hand of Wisdom in action, Hand of Wisdom in action, Hand of Wisdom. Okay, well, never mind. The crossbows are relevant, right?
Yeah. Even without stat stacking, still better.
Yeah, and it's like, okay, well, obviously take some away from there, and then it's like, okay, well, what are you left with? Well, you're still left with probably crossbows are bad. So what do you have to do? And it's like, crossbows now, for example, just a quick change is like instead of using one-handed damage mods for added damage, they use two-handed and their base damage. And then all the skills now have a higher growth per level because they scale with other external factors like attack speed less because they have the reload time. So they will be getting more damage per level, whereas before most skills were very consistently growing per level. So almost every spell would get the same amount of damage per level regardless of everything else it had. And this is how you got things like Spark just being the dominant skill, out of control, because it scales not only that, it scales obviously the number of projectiles kind of out of control, and with projectile and duration and other multiplicative scaling factors, you'll end up with just like, well, of course I'm just going to Spark everywhere. And so now it's like, well, Spark has these other multiplicative things, so it should get less damage per level. And this wasn't POE1, and was the right answer, and we somehow didn't replicate that exact thing that we did.
Yeah, everything just had the same damage growth.
Yes, we end up with the exactly same. So now every single skill we're looking at it and going, you're going to scale more, you're going to scale less, you're going to scale more on the damage axis because they have other things that scale.
And this just means that, like, when you're asking, well, what skills have changed? Well, the answer is literally all of them. Like, no skill will have the same damage as before. It's like a complete, a complete rebalance of the whole thing.
Expectation-wise, it means that any skill that didn't have a lot of
questo
things
è
you could do for it,
nessuna skill avrà lo stesso
that
danno
should be
di
the case.
prima.
But I mean, even as well, like when we're looking at things like, I sort of mentioned it vaguely before, but like I'm trying to make sure, like we are trying to make sure that like the combos that work early game still work late game. which is kind of another important element of that too.
Yeah. So crossbow's been buffed a lot, and I also heard the other thing that was definitely getting a lot of buffs is warrior as well.
I mean, we'll see how that looks. I mean,
everything and everything
yeah.
up and everything down.
Yeah.
It's so hard to even like.
Yeah.
It's so hard to have like a cohesive message with the single like this class is better.
Yeah.
Because it's just, I mean, it's easy for mercenary skills or for crossbow skills because I can look at those numbers and just be like, okay, everything's clearly higher.
Yeah.
But then in others, it's like it's
Well,
that's
that's
too
the thing
easy
with
to
warriors.
say.
Like warrior was like in many cases there was a lot of things that it was actually not bad.
Yeah.
Like it was good in many ways.
But then it didn't have anything that was outrageously broken like how the other classes did. In the same
and it
way.
didn't gel with all players in many ways as well.
I mean, we've also done balance changes on literally every Ascendancy class as well.
Yep.
You know, Pathfinder has like 2 extra notables and some changes. You've got a new notable on Chronomancer. You've got a changes to like Chrono was way too much utility stuff. Like where's just my like good thing, So like you got like a good
my
thing,
bonk node?
less niche, more something. And then we've just done that on every single class. We've upped a lot of the undertaken or bad things, and we've downed a lot of the really good, powerful things that were over the top. So
this is why we've gone back to the more conventional patch note cycle of a couple of days beforehand, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, look, absolutely.
If they were ready, you would have them. They're not ready because we're not finished, right? Like, and giving someone half the balance changes doesn't allow them to even make educated decisions on what they're going to play.
So it's just completely pointless at that point.
So we'd rather give you everything all at once instead of just some like here's.
But even once you have the patch notes, like don't even be under the mistaken illusion that you'll be somehow able to determine what the best builds are from that. Like this, because it's such a big difference.
It's hard to take things into context because you can look at it and say, oh, okay, so like this thing
Rebalance
got nerfed, but this thing got
di
nerfed. It's
tutte le
like, okay, but
skill.
you're linking just 2 things. You're not linking all of the other things.
Yeah, exactly. So
We'll try though. We'll try.
Sure, give it a shot. Do your best.
Look, when the game released, you had to learn everything. You just might have to do it again and again. Every single patch every major patch after this, you're going to have less and less of that, and your familiarity will be able to come in and be useful. So at least from a balance perspective at this point, like it's not like we've structurally changed the campaign and all that. So you have still a lot of information and knowledge that is going to help you play the game better anyway on your second. I mean, a lot of people maybe made multiple characters, but for a lot of people this might just be their second character.
Yeah.
So they're certainly going to be more equipped. And we've had the races, so you've been able to see how the best people play.
Oh yeah.
Completo,
some good tips to
rebalance
learn from
tutte
there.
le skill.
That lever skip with the portal, oof, beautiful. It's my favorite.
Interessante.
On the slightly bigger picture as well, like life and armor versus energy shields, are you happy with kind of where either of those are at, or what do you kind of hope to achieve with them?
Energy shield certainly, I mean, primarily due to Grim Feast. And like mana stacking being a little bit out of control that's been too strong on more the int side of defense for sure. Expect some pretty drastic changes there. As for armor, well, it's one of those like accuracy kind of things, right? Where it's like or dexterity and like where it's like honestly our next point with that is honestly just to get in a room and just be like, all right, let's pretend it didn't exist and we were coming up with the game from scratch and we're like, okay, we have strength. What would we want the ideal defense to be? And honestly, it might even extend further than that. And really just see, firstly, to make sure we end up... If we don't end up at the same point, to make sure we end up as better, maybe we do end up at the same point and we do just go,
Quindi
okay,
anche
here are
Energy
some other changes that we
Shield
need to make
completamente
around
rivisto,
physical damage in particular.
in
and
basso
something like that.
però
But
sembrerebbe, perché hanno
it's one
proprio
of those
detto che non
things
lo
where at this
vogliono
point we
così
just need to
forte.
like review it from
Armor
literally back to
rivista.
basics and see where we end up, because it might be something completely different, but like it might also end up being relatively the same, and maybe it was the better answer. But either way, it's worth the discussion and worth the time, because it's... I wouldn't say we're happy with it, and I wouldn't say we're necessarily like all the way unhappy with it, but it's... Yeah, there's something not quite right going on for sure.
You're still fundamentally questioning some of these things and willing to go back to the drawing board on them, which is quite interesting.
Well, 100%.
And this is the time to do it.
We
Tanta
drastically changed how
roba,
evasion
ragazzi,
works, and
sul
I would say
fuoco,
it's for the
tanta
better,
roba.
and we should be exploring that with everything, and so we just need to do that process still. That being said, as we make things more like the shield block better, as we buff the ascendancies or nerf them in on the other defensive arcs, things like armor will become better. But yeah, again, it's not quite right, but I don't have enough information to say, where it will look, what it will look like in the future. So.
Yeah, okay, cool. So let's talk about recovery as well, because that's another big thing. I remember early on ExileCon discussions about the importance of limited recovery in making combat matter, so that you could have situations where you're attritioned or where like the hit that you took matters for the next hit that you take, and just back up the full. But it's pretty good in boss fights, honestly. I feel like recovery is somewhat limited. That still happens a bit, but certainly in clearing, you have access to tons of recovery with cannibalism and things like that.
It's certainly out of control, and it's a little bit of, again, partly due to the fact that kill speed and clear speed just was way higher than we had expected and what we balanced around. And because if we were balancing around what people are currently doing with the upper echelons of builds, you'd have to have effectively every average player and average build just could be completely, it would be useless for them. Now, there are ways around that, of course, but part of it is like a lot of the recovery mechanics, like if you're talking about things like on kill and based on damage dealt, it is a rich get richer problem. And so, yes, there are cases that are problematic, and then there are just characters that are too strong. And there's a little bit of both going on. I wouldn't say we've targeted any recovery specifically here, really.
Okay.
Like, it's not been a main goal. I'm not going to say that there aren't little bits changed here and there, but it's more about, we've really made sure to just... It's kind of hard to say exactly what we've done because, again, this is probably a thing we're going to have to look at next time because there are so many changes that it is hard to even, understand how this is going to fit into
Once
all
the
of that
dust
now.
clears, you might be able to see how
100%.
Quindi aspettiamoci appunto
we're at the
Energy
point where we
Shield,
do need a little bit of like, all right, we
nerf,
need another round of
Evasion,
testing for this
sembrerebbe
Yeah.
anche
and
lì
again, I'm gonna
mezzo
stress
nerf,
it is actually
Armor
impossible for the
in
amount of
teoria la
changes for
dovrebbero
us
rivedere e
internally to be
soprattutto
able to be certain
potenziare.
to test all of this.
Yeah, but the vision
Già
is
l'hanno
still that
rivista in
idea
realtà
of
quando
like
fecero, non mi
more
ricordo
stricter
la
recoverable,
patch,
less
diciamo,
powerful
il
recovery.
numero della patch, ma un
Well,
paio,
it
diciamo, un
shouldn't
paio di
certainly
patch
be
fa,
like here's
però non
one
è che
little
sia cambiato
little
grosse
piece and
cose.
now it's fully solved, right?
Quindi
Like, having
anche
heaps of recovery
l'Armor
should be
devono
something you
fare un
can achieve, but it should
rework
require a decent
totale
amount of
perché
investment or high tier
anche lì se no
optimization,
non
right?
è
Like,
worth, diciamo,
for
rispetto
sure,
alle
it should
altre
be possible.
difese.
It just shouldn't be trivial.
Yeah. So, and on that note, then,
Quindi
like vision, what's your
implicitamente
vision of what Path of
praticamente
Exile 2
hanno
is
già
supposed to be? Because I think
nerfato
some people are still
l'ascendancy
like unsure about, is it supposed to be just kind of
dell'Infernalist, perché se
more like Path
fanno
of
un
Exile
nerf
1, a faster
dell'Energy
game, or is it supposed
Shield,
to be
ad
a slower
esempio
game, a much more
i
different
nodi, quelli
thing?
che
Like,
danno più
this is a
Energy
hard
Shield
thing to
dell'Infernalist
communicate, but
Yeah, I
diventano
mean,
it
meno
gets asked a lot, and I
appetibili,
feel like people are still a
ecco,
bit unsure.
It's
meno
funny though
potenti
because like once
poi
again it's
di
not I
fatto.
don't view it as just a pure speed question. It's about like is the combat engaging and fun?
Yeah.
And also are you getting to the point where you never get to engage with bosses? Like if you're never if the first time you fight a boss you just destroy it without seeing any of its mechanics, then that's a problem. And it doesn't really say anything about the pace of combat. Like if you look at some of the Hunter stuff we've got there, like it's incredibly fast paced when it comes to like dashing around and stuff, but you still have to engage with things, and that's the key element for us. So like obviously players want to get ridiculously powerful, and we still want to let them get ridiculously powerful. It just has to be earned. It has to be like after a certain point, and like after you like once you have finished your character, once you've sort of done everything, then yeah, you should be just like like crazy and like beyond the point of all reason. It's just that you have to earn it. You have to get there, right? And like that's the power growth thing. That's like it's really hard to sort of just like smoothen that out across the whole game, but like that's ultimately the goal, right? You have to kind of get to the point of like that. You constantly feel you're getting stronger. You always feel like the next like, oh, I got this, and now I'm better, and now I'm better, and now I'm better, and you keep on going. And you have to scale that all the way to the end, because the moment that you get to the point where you're just trivializing everything too early, it's like, well, the rest of the game just becomes boring after that point, right? It has to be that there's the level of that you still have to get.
And so kind of based on that earlier discussions about like damage and boss time to kill and things like that, it sounds like the time where you want that to be starting to taper off, like the players can start to cheat that a bit, is after they've done pinnacle bosses.
Well, you should feel that way multiple times throughout the game. But then later you still then get to a new level of challenge that still requires you to engage again. Like if we're doing our job correctly, it's like you reach a point of feeling like you're a god, and then you're like, oh shit, but there's new god-like shit above me that then makes me have to then do
I have to find the uber gods.
Exactly right. So like, you have to keep on with that train. And it's actually really hard to take you back from feeling like, oh, I'm all powerful, back down to like I'm feeling and so you have to kind of get that in there as you
want
go
that
out.
Dragon Ball anime arc.
Yeah, for sure, right?
There's always a new level of Super Saiyan
exactly,
after the previous one.
exactly, right? That's what you have to be able to do. And so it's just smoothly taking up that power level curve, all the way to the end.
Yeah, so I think like when it comes down to things like movement speed when clearing, it's about like if you're able to just ignore everything because you're moving so
Yeah,
fast.
exactly. If you're able to ignore everything, then you obviously you will move really fast. If you're not able to ignore everything, suddenly your clear speed is like not as big of a thing. So long as there are still things that are challenging you, as long as you reach the next tier and like everything's harder again, then you're good.
I feel like a point of the difficulty here between the communication of this with you guys and some of the people in the community is that I feel like you're not really looking at it in terms of PoE1 versus 2. You're just trying to answer that question specifically.
Yeah.
So it's not really about like it being like PoE1 or 2.
Exactly, right? It's just about making the combat good.
It's either the combat is fun or it isn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's a sort of spectrum of stuff there, but I would say that you want to be able to engage with the boss. You want to be able to fight its mechanics and do its skills, and you want to feel like you can overcome those over time and get better. And you want to engage with monsters, and you want. And yeah, there's probably some people who are like, no, I don't. I want to just press a button and loot drops on the ground, and I don't have to look or do anything. And
well, so that's an interesting point. Is there's this let's say the quote unquote mythical average build is are they able to switch their brain off and watch Netflix on a second monitor only if they're doing like maps 3 levels under what they should be doing or something, or should that be able to happen at kind of like where they're
once you're
at
at your tier of godhood?
Yeah, but I actually want to address that because, like, okay, so I'm watching. Well, okay, right now I'm watching Deep Space Nine, funnily enough, but you know, I'm watching Deep Space Nine as I'm playing, as I'm testing the game, right? It's like you develop a muscle memory, and that muscle memory can include using multiple skills and doing like multiple things, and that's still to me more engaging than just holding down a button, you know?
So you're saying this like watching things on the secondary thing isn't about the game being easy; it's just a skill issue. You need to get
I wouldn't say that. I'm just saying that your muscle memory can develop from more than just using a single skill. You just like it. And we've always sort of said that there's this thing where like, okay, sometimes you pause the show, right? Sometimes that happens because you come to a thing that's
this is an update to the classic, second monitor.
I love how the
Netflix thing.
friggin' watching something on the second screen has become such a
I
fundamental
know
part
it's just,
of
the community's just grabbed it and it's become a thing forever. But it's been updated now. Like this is the update. You want want them to have to pause
it was
sometimes.
a philosophy set for a different
because I feel like I've said that 10 years ago about how like sometimes you get the spike in difficulty.
It'll
like,
haunt
oh
you
shit,
forever.
Like now you have to do this. Yeah, I guess that turns into pause the video at this point. But yeah, but no, but look, if I play this way as well, right? Like it's not like I'm, like once you get to a certain point, it's like obviously you're going to want to, the music, you've heard it lots of times, like you want to have something else going on. That's fine. But I still think that there needs to be the ability to have. To have something engaging from time to time that you have to deal with. So.
It's always been a bit of a silly thing because you've got so much element of choose your own difficulty in Path of Exile, right? Like
exactly.
Do harder maps, do easy maps.
But but look, people always want to choose the hardest stuff, right? So therefore, that's what they're judging it against.
That's true.
And so that's why you do need a level of economic gating to make it so that you can't go too far with difficulty without without having to prove the economic stuff on some level, so that you can.
Yeah, you're dying and losing the map.
Exactly, you're dying and losing the map. That we have to think. Like all that map sustain stuff is so tricky for that reason. Getting that exactly right.
Well, it sounds like some big advancements in that regards. So I've got some kind of random tail questions here. Are you planning in the future on, I don't think it's probably happening this time around, but on changing campaign pacing at all? Like, I feel like some of the zones are probably a bit too large and a bit too empty.
I mean, that's more about adding more stuff to them than it is about making them smaller.
Yeah.
Like, there's still a lot more events in campaign that we haven't added yet that still need doing. There's like big lists of, things that we never got time to do, so we'll keep on getting to those.
The argument there, which I do believe in, is an area should be able to be large if it has enough interesting things. The frequency of interesting things is high or consistent.
I mean, like the size of an area is completely right. Like imagine there were no load screens. You just walked from place to place. Like you wouldn't be thinking about area size exactly. It's just, is the density of interest enough? Like the fact that there happens to be a load screen between one place and the other is not really the relevant
long
element.
is directly proportional to interesting.
Yeah, exactly, right? So so to me,
one thing we do need to obviously do, and we have done in some areas, is just making sure that if it is a large area, it's not just interesting things to find as well. It's also making sure there's enough monster variety that way it's not just so repetitive.
Exactly.
Yeah, where you've got like almost different biomes.
There are some where I would say the area is large enough, or you're in there long enough such that there isn't enough monster variance, and so it just gets a bit repetitive.
But it's completely true that anytime someone says, "Oh, this area is too large," I'm like, "Well, okay, so what monsters are we changing? What events are we adding? That kind of stuff, right? Because that's the way that you change it around. Like there are areas that are very large that no one complains about because they're stuff.
'Cause they got a
Fine,
lot-
the
they got a
fun
lot of
There's
things
also
and
things
stuff
like
they
there
have.
are good. I don't know how many people are gonna play this or how many people stop playing before 011, but like it's worth noting again. Like areas have like the fast travel thing now as well
Yeah.
to
It's certainly a big
between
help.
checkpoints,
Yeah.
and there's some of that stuff which I'm hoping again when people start playing from scratch they get to see a lot of the improvements we did before as
Yes.
well and see how they feel
And
about
it's
it again.
worth mentioning through campaign, we've got both the wisps and there's also strong boxes as well through campaign.
Yep.
Like they feel a bit different. There's just as you play through, you're certainly finding some things you wouldn't have last
Shrines
time.
soon.
couple more
soon.
ones.
Yeah.
Soon.
Yeah.
The what?
Shrines.
Oh,
We'll have them actually in the campaign soon.
Cool.
I think art wasn't quite done right, or something like that. Yeah.
Well, yeah, it might be a bit weird. The ones in endgame, it works a little bit better narratively, but using that asset throughout the campaign, it would feel real random. So it's just a matter of as soon as the
Ora il
art's done,
problema grande sarà che
tracking
chiaramente
those in as well.
Oh, great.
path
so that
of
could be
building non
after
sarà aggiornato,
Ah,
chissà
it'll
quando
certainly be
l'aggiornano.
shortly after.
But also like every
Si
time we
potrà,
do like
non
we're
lo so
expecting
se
people
si
to play through
riuscirà
again, like we'll probably tweak like which
prima,
content spawns in
diciamo,
different areas
della,
and just like fiddle
del
around a bit so
4
that
di
you play it
aprile, a
just feels
questo
a bit
punto,
fresh
quindi
and,
della release
things going on there.
della
You
patch,
kind of got me there. I
se
feel
sarà
like each of the
possibile
zones I'm
fare
trying to
il
think
theory
of
crafting
feel like
direttamente
they're
sul path
way
of
too big.
building,
Is
la
like
vedo
they're also
piuttosto
just
dura,
coincidentally empty.
anche perché se le patch notice
So I guess that is
escono la
maybe
prossima
perhaps
settimana,
It's the exact same problem happens in maps, by the way.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, we talked about that, like the
Exact
boring
same
empty
Yeah,
map.
when
Domani è
people say the
venerdì.
map's too big, yeah, just not.
I think
Quindi
I
se escono la
I
prossima
phrased it to Jonathan
settimana,
yesterday when we were talking about it as every
praticamente
screen looks the same as every other screen.
usciranno,
It
But
wouldn't
that
matter
is-
where I'm
this is
lunedì
standing
o
in the map, it
martedì,
would look
sarebbe il
I think the map you were talking about
31
was Step.
di,
Yeah,
Like
that
we were
was-
looking
di
at Step
aprile,
and being
quindi
like,
ci
okay,
sarebbero
well, what's
praticamente
actually
2 o 3 giorni
It's a big
per
square.
aggiungere tutto nel
there's
path of
not nothing
building e
going on.
non
And
credo che
even if
questa
there was
cosa
stuff
sarà
going on, I mean,
fatta,
like
quindi
it's funny because like it took us a
probabilmente
little while to even come to an understanding of like what
non
needed
si
to change
riuscirà
there.
a fare il
Because I'm
theory
sort of saying like, okay,
crafting
well,
da
like,
path of building, che sarebbe la cosa migliore, ma
it's like,
bisognerà
do you find
utilizzare
the
i
cold
tools
planes in D2
tipo
as to be a boring
Maxroll o
area? Because
queste
it's
cose
ultimately
qui.
kind of similar. But the answer is, well, there's buildings
Quindi sì, ci
sometimes, and
sarà
you get like,
abbastanza
it's just
da
like
divertirsi.
there's just a little more going on in that way. So like, we need to make sure that maps feel that way too. When
Yep.
we're
Yep.
doing them.
There has been a few pervasive crashes and issues like that.
Oh
so
god,
how's
yes,
that
yes.
going?
Well, I'll tell you what, the entire engine team have basically been entirely focused on that for 3 months, and it's been horrible because. So I mean, it's kind of a long story, and I don't know if I should go into all of it, but ultimately, the issue is that on NVIDIA cards, the remaining issue at least is that on NVIDIA cards, if you're using a driver that's bigger than I think 560 point something, like basically after that point the game crashes, and if you install an older driver than that, it doesn't.
Vi spiegano che c'è un problema con un driver delle schede video di Nvidia
NVIDIA is
che
just like
crea
not really much
il
help.
problema dei
Like, so it's like
crash,
just trying to nail down what
dei
even
loading
causes it. It's
screen
just so hard, and it's
infinito.
like, and the thing that sucks about it is like it won't reproduce on anywhere except production and alpha. And like the moment you change, you look at it, like we can't reproduce it anymore. And yet for some people it happens all the time, and it's just like it's so horrible.
Yeah.
And like the what we've done. We actually come up with a somewhat ridiculous idea that was now implementing, which we're going into 020 with, by the way, which is that, and this will seem stupid, but like, how about we just don't crash? Which
You tell me about this.
Yeah, exactly. So basically what we do is, what we're now changing it to is that if the GPU driver crashes, what we do is we create a new device and then upload all the textures to that. The game is paused while this is happening, and then it unpauses, and then the game keeps going. And so that is what we're doing to solve this crash. And it's kind of ridiculous that this has to be the solution, because like it's just mysteriously in the NVIDIA driver.
No,
we have like,
questa cosa non è
and we have
possibile.
tried to find a
Spero che
workaround
non
for
sia
this. It is
vero
just
che
like
lo
so
stai
difficult.
dicendo, stia trollando.
So that in 020, that's what will happen. So
Do the,
Yeah.
while we're
Ovviamente
here,
se
like,
il
do the
gioco
players ever
crasha
work
per
around?
questo
Like,
problema,
well,
to get it done, like,
you can
loro
install the driver
creerebbero,
earlier than
cioè
What
tramite
about-
chiaramente
what about, is
tutto
the Vulkan,
l'hardware,
does that
diciamo, del
matter?
gioco,
yes,
software del gioco,
well, but no,
creano
not
una
entirely. It
nuova
does still happen
instance
in Vulkan,
mettendo in
but
pausa il tuo
it's a bit
personaggio,
unclear,
quindi poi quando
about that
riesci
particular thing about
ti
whether or not that
ributta nella nuova
I figured it might
instance.
be
No,
an
it
opportunity
is in the
delle
driver, but
problematiche
I mean,
enormi
yeah,
a
like
livello
if
di
you install an
performance,
older
di
driver, it will
server,
go away.
stability, ma
Like,
boh,
So all of this time, when
questo mi
people have
sembra un
been
po'
saying the classic
fantascienza.
armchair developer meme, it was like, why don't you just add a bit of code that says if crash equals false?
yeah, well, something like
It
that.
works.
Basically do the engineering
They
to
were
allow
right.
us to just recreate the entire GPU context,
Just don't
and then there you go,
crash.
and then don't crash, and that is actually the
Amazing.
solution we're now going with. But it's like the thing is, the other one that sucked though was that stupid damn full system freeze. Because I'll tell you what, if the entire system freezes, there is just nothing you can do to find out what the hell caused it. Because like, there's no like
report.
crash report, there's no logging, there's no literally nothing, right? And it's like that happened. That happened when the Windows November H2 update shipped, and then things just started mysteriously freezing. And my God, that was hard to track down. And you ask Microsoft about it, and they're like, "Oh, we'll look into it." And it's like nothing happens. It's like Jesus Christ, guys. Like it's so annoying.
I can feel your frustration.
Yes,
is palpable.
It's incredibly frustrating because it's like we want nothing better than to fix this shit. So that one was fixed. Like there was some spin lock implementation that like. I don't have any understanding of why it causes this to happen, but we tweaked it a bit and now it doesn't happen anymore. And it's like there's no rational reason why this should cause the operating system to freeze. And the thing is, there's not even a good answer at the end. There's not even like, oh, here's what was wrong. It's just like this random particular sequence of operations being done causes your entire system to freeze for no reason after this Windows update. And it's like, well, cool. Like what do you do about that? Like it's just terrible. And so yeah, that one sucked. But basically now, I mean, it's funny because we've fixed so many crashes that weren't the crash. So like general stability, apart from that crash, is incredibly good now.
99% down, maybe probably 99.99%.
And it's like, the thing is, we'll fix a crash and we'll be like, oh, maybe this is the crash, and then it fixes like 2% of crashes, and you're like, well, that wasn't the crash, but at least it looks good to fix, right? Like it's so annoying. But as I said, we have a workaround now.
That's good.
That will basically recreate the graphics device if
so you might get a pause, and then
you'll get a pause for 3 seconds, and then like roughly depending on hardware, and then it will continue, and the game will pause at the.
I obviously just make it clear we don't want it to remain like that. Obviously.
Yes. Obviously, we'll still try and fix it, but at least it means you're not crashing. And you're certainly not freezing anymore. That's sorted out. And then, we found another one recently, which was like, okay, so this is another stupid one, right? Like, so anyway, so there's that whole like Intel CPU issue, like on 13th and 14th generation Intel CPUs, where like there's some freaking voltage regulation problem that causes CPUs to break a certain way. And if that happens, then like the thing that will break is that like the decompressor will like it'll decompress something and like one bit of it will be wrong, literally one bit in there, and then it fails like a hash check, and then that just causes the game to crash. And so the fix, like it's like things like that will happen as well. Like you've got stuff like that. It's like, well, once again, it's like it is our problem. We have to fix it because it's affecting real users that like the solution to stuff like that. It's just so annoying to find. So yeah, anyway,
it sounds like you've improved a lot of the unrelated crashes, and you've come up with a good workaround at least now for that one. That sounds like a massive improvement. But I also just think your obvious frustration is very validating for people who have been frustrated with this.
Exactly, but the thing that's the most annoying about it is that like all these the engine team who are spending time fixing this, they're not able to spend time working on performance issues, which is something else that we need to be obviously improving over time. There's been a few performance improvements, but like not nearly the number we would have had if we had all 7 of those people working on performance improvements. That's been the most frustrating thing about it.
Crashes first.
100%. But it's like when they're kind of
we have been chipping away at some decent ones though.
We have.
We got some pretty good performance problems resolved.
Yeah, I mean there was that ice one that was really bad. Yeah. And, there was things like that. So like the worst offenders we're certainly fixing. But and like I have no doubt by the time we get each time we do a new release, it'll be even better. Yep. Great. But by the time we get a full release, I'm sure it'll be like very good.
And I mean, speaking of, I know it's like tangential sort of as well. Obviously, we had a lot of woes around the release, but we've done a whole lot of back-end engineering work to make it.
Yes. So the launch should go smoother as far as like all
it was pretty good.
Stuff. It was.
Wow, it still was 5 hours of not good.
Yeah, but like 5 hours compared
to
no.
This time.
Days,
I mean, look, I'm
standard.
I'm tempting fate here, but like we've made significant improvements to the ability for the realm to handle stuff.
So 5 minutes this time.
Well, I mean, we'll see, right? You never know what's going to go wrong. But
sometimes you get caught out by something random.
It should be much better this time.
I hope you get enough players to stress your theory. That's always the good thing to aim for. We'll just run up with a couple of the random kind of chat questions before we finish up today. Any possibility of Ascendancy respecs? Is that something you've considered, especially with all the changes going on?
We're sort of not in love with it. It's just one of those things where like I feel like it's key to the identity of the character, and like respecing like the journey of the character, like it does get pretty significantly compromised if you allow for that. But I know Mark is especially strongly feeling about it.
I mean, the answer is going to be the exact same as last time, which is like, I don't know exactly, or I don't know how to articulate exactly why I feel so strongly about this, and so do a lot of the team members. Of like, again, it's just that your choices should matter, and you know, it's obviously something that I was okay with in POE1, and so there is probably a world where I will be okay, but there's got to be some level of work involved to achieve it that isn't to just pay a little bit of gold and then you're done or whatever. Like, I want to find a way to do it if we're going to do it in a way that is like grounded
That's
and
interesting idea.
and difficult to well, not I wouldn't say difficult, but like requires some actual work to do. So that would be the compromise I'd certainly be willing to explore, which I have been thinking about recently because I know every single time we come to an expansion it's going to come up. So
the trial of respecting or something.
yeah, there'll be something where your character has to undergo some sort of challenge or something to do it. And I know you could argue, well, doing the trial is that, and you're
Gotta
not
make some
entirely wrong, but
sacrifices.
something a bit more.
Sacrifice a few
So
animals,
I'm
few thousand
sure-
enemies.
I'm
Ascendancy
sure we'll have a conclusive
probabilmente
decision or
non
at
lo
least a level of
vedremo,
articulation one way or the other by the end of
o
early
comunque
access.
non in questa faccia.
But for now,
ask you then.
yeah, it's just going to take me a bit more time to figure out what I want to do.
Però
there.
non hanno risposto proprio di no
Is
secco,
dynamic
diciamo.
switching between keyboard and
Vediamo.
mouse and controller coming at all?
It's not in 020, but
Non
it
è
will
un
be
no
coming.
definitivo.
It's way.
Yes, so
Work-
like,
being
and
worked
I'm
on.
really hoping by 030, like we should be able to get that. That is a very key feature.
It seems like it's going to be hard to loot juice maps with only one portal. Oh no, well this question has already been answered. Well, actually no, because there's still one portal.
No, this is a concern.
That's
And we
true
have to
with
do something
juice,
about it.
we have to
Yes,
figure
we
it
have
out,
to
yeah.
figure it out.
My
Yeah.
bad,
So
yeah.
in the next week, we will actually be looking into this one.
There's a few problems around
point.
it
Yeah.
still that other things to come up, like
Yep.
you know, you also don't want it to be that if you did use your one portal, because it's your portal that's used, not everyone's portal that's used. Because when it says
That's
one
actually a good point.
portal,
Yeah, it's a good
that's
point.
one
We didn't
portal
I think we
for
mentioned
up
that.
to 6 players.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so when it's 6 portals, it's 6 portals for up to 6 players, which means technically it's 36 entries and exits out of the map, right? And like that changes things in a way where it's like when it's down to 1, it's like you don't want it to be that, oh, I failed the map. Quick, Ziggy, come join my party, get in here and finish it for me. You know, you don't want to kind of have that style of play happening. So there are still some things we need to figure out with this because it's going to promote some what I would probably classify as degenerate behavior, as well as the fact that you're probably like, oh, my inventory's full, zone out. Oh, what the? Okay, sweet. And sure, you can add a warning, but I don't know if even restricting it to just one inventory of loot like that is good, right? I would personally prefer that it's one death, not one, entry. So there's some stuff we need to figure out, but again, Jonathan and I need to talk about that and actually solve that. So.
That's interesting, yeah, because the death seems like the important part. So as long as it's not like a way to cheat it, it seems like almost like you'd want to allow people to come and go as they please until they die, right?
Yep, which is a potential solution. But again, can't say for sure. But yeah, 100%. That person is right for bringing that up, and it is on our radar for this coming week to have, or weekend as well, to have a solution for.
Yeah. So with this new league not having a specific league mechanic, is it still a challenge league? Does it still have challenges?
It's actually
no.
I
There's
didn't think so.
no achievements or challenges yet.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure we weren't going to do that for a little bit yet.
There's not really. Maybe later in early access, but for now, not really.
Yeah.
We're just trying to keep it more about
Make
the
the
game
game.
and the mechanics, and less about
Make the game first.
the achievements. And the achievements will certainly, an achievement system and stuff like that will certainly be there with the full release, and we'll reintegrate all of that at the time.
Is there any plans for Stash Tab expansions, like for
Mamma
example,
mia.
rune
Sto
storage?
elaborando
Especially
queste
Right now, I'm actually trying to at
informazioni,
least add the affinity without adding a custom tab.
rischio di
Those two things
crafting,
appeared
folle
from the
di ste build,
implementation
mamma
standpoint,
mia.
so
Yeah.
I want to try and divorce them so we can have
It-
affinities without
We
it.
Oh, yeah.
wanted to get those in this patch, but unfortunately they just
Yeah.
didn't quite make it.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I mean, it's actually quite likely to come in sometime,
It's-
like in a point release after,
Yeah.
like within the 020.
As soon as the
thing
patch is
back.
out
Yeah,
and
yeah.
stable and we're
Yeah,
on
yeah,
top
yeah.
of things, it's going to be like, all right, we need to get all those UX or quality of life
yeah.
things that we blatantly missed out on.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think
For
that-
example, being able to add bookmarks to your atlas and
Yep,
write the name.
that is one
that
that
is something
we
we are-
designed some stuff for it. We just haven't got it
Yeah,
yet.
cool.
I want to say it's like 80% implemented right now.
Yeah. So
So we-
it'll be as soon as we can. We'll get that in there.
All right, that is excellent. And on that note, we'll wrap things up today. Thank you so much, Jonathan. Thank you so much, Mark.
Thank you very much for coming.
And thank everyone
Love
for
it.
watching.
Thanks for having me here. Great time. Thank you very much, everyone. And I'm Ziggy D, and thanks for watching.
See you.
Allora, che dire, patch veramente piena, super piena, forse anche di più di quanto ci si aspettasse. Ehm, allora, la prima cosa che salta all'occhio chiaramente è il rebalance totale praticamente di tutte le skill, quindi dei danni, delle interazioni, appunto delle abilità. Quindi ci aspetteremo sicuramente dei grossi nerf a quelle build che sono proprio super performanti e che abbiamo visto anche con interazioni appunto particolarmente sbilanciate e particolari. Secondo me, appunto, come già dicevo nella live, le stat stacker, quindi ne vedremo un nerf piuttosto interessante, quindi grosso sicuramente. Le build che utilizzavano tantissimo l'Energy Shield, che hanno detto anche qui che sarà nerfato piuttosto in maniera forte, sembrerebbe, e anche, anche se un pochino meno, diciamo, in maniera grossa, l'Evasion. Quindi anche lì, tra le cose però anche più importanti, vediamo, io chiaramente questo ve lo dico a livello di minion lover, gli spettri, quindi questo è una grande, diciamo, salto avanti, diciamo, nella creazione appunto delle minion build, perché chi ha giocato a Path of Exile 1 o comunque in generale in Path of Exile gli spettri sono una componente, diciamo, fondamentale delle minion build, quindi sicuramente tanta roba, l'ascendancy particolare del negromante, quindi tutta minion sembrerebbe, però anche particolare perché appunto c'è un nodo con una doppia maledizione, quindi si può applicare una doppia maledizione e addirittura far sì che i nemici che hanno Exprof, che fondamentalmente è un'abilità che appunto diciamo li rende immuni alle maledizioni, lo ignora. Quindi anche particolare, e poi c'era un altro nodo che dice appunto che i nemici che vengono uccisi da noi o dagli alleati e che sono sotto un effetto di maledizione esplodono. Non c'è nessun accenno, almeno qui nella live, a un rework della meccanica delle summon dei minion, quindi quando ci allontaniamo troppo dai minion o quando muoiono, come funziona, se c'è cambiamenti o cose particolari e non si sa se saranno aggiunte skill tipo convocation o cose particolari. Altra cosa clamorosa, 100 support gems, addirittura loro hanno detto più, infatti scriviamolo, più di 100 support gems nuove, più di 100 unici nuovi, sicuramente ne vedremo tanti simili da quelli che sono stati presi da Path of Exile 1, quindi sicuramente, e addirittura 25 skills gem nuovi, quindi tanta roba. Poi abbiamo, vabbè, la nuova classe che sembra veramente bella, interessante, ha tutte e tre le ascendancy sbloccate, una è la ritualista, l'amazzone e la terza in questo momento non me lo ricordo, però ha delle abilità particolarmente gustose, come ad esempio il tame sui mostri e prenderli come companion. Tame praticamente si può fare sui mostri che vengono sconfitti e nel video addirittura viene fatto su un boss, il boss, quello, il gorilla, quello grosso, insomma, con le quattro braccia che ci one-shotta fondamentalmente. Lui riesce a prenderlo, insomma, quindi li prende come companion e poi c'era un discorso sulle Temate Beast non possono essere scambiati, non sono tradabili, però lì devo capire perché forse parlano proprio della gemma che non può essere scambiata, però anche lì non si capisce. E poi c'è un nodo di una di queste ascendancy che permette appunto di utilizzare tre anelli. Quindi anche questo, tanta roba, soprattutto se pensiamo che gli anelli poi possono essere messi in combo, ad esempio con i genui. quindi 3 anelli potenziati, tanta roba. La nuova Ascendancy del mercenario, quindi questo Blackguard. Abbiamo visto anche i totem nuovi, quindi le baliste, le piccole baliste. I companion, quindi anche lì appunto lo vedevamo prima, ecco, i companion.
I'll right the wrongs I've done.
Che è partito oggi a caso, e il companion, ecco appunto, di queste cose particolari, insomma c'è un sacco veramente di cose, le nuove armi, quindi la lancia, sicuramente il Launtress, forse le spade. ehm, Abbiamo visto anche questa cosa, molte meno torri e si possono usare 3 tablet a questo punto, quindi anche qui secondo me è un rework giusto, perché in generale permette proprio di fare un juicing anche meno noioso, cioè di cercare tutte quelle torri, fare tutte quelle mappe con le torri, quindi anche quello tanta roba. Nuove nodi passivi dell'Atlas. Poi abbiamo le nuove meccaniche endgame, quindi essenze di Strombox, di Wisp, charm unici, le pozioni ibride che non l'hanno spiegate ma si vede in un frame, diciamo, del video, quindi appunto life e mana. Un'altra meccanica in game, questi monoliti, quindi anche questo si può mettere sopra. Nuove location delle mappe, nuovi biomi, tantissimo juicing delle meccaniche, anche qui vediamo, perché anche da loro viene detto che se è particolarmente tosto può essere veramente difficile. I Rogue Exile, quindi anche questa nuova meccanica in game. Questa si può cliccare qua. Anche questa corruption di Dorianni, anche questa io l'ho vista, sempre rientra nelle nuove meccaniche in game, nuove essenze, nuovi omen, drop più comune. Nuove currency non hanno fatto vedere molto se non il Fracturing Orb. Ehm, Ci sono, vabbè, le nuove rune, le Greater, bisognerà vedere come interagiscono sul core, se i sul core rimangono più forti o no. Il Recombinator, non si è parlato né della nuova meccanica Blight né degli atti nuovi della campagna, quindi a quanto pare rimarrà tutto così. E poi il revisiting, insomma, dell'Energy Shield, dell'Evasion, dell'Armor, quindi anche questo molto interessante. Appunto aspettiamoci per le build Energy Shield based un bel nerf sicuro. E, e ora si partirà con il theory crafting. Ora a questo punto, se si trovasse già il video, ehm, se si trovasse già il video, che a noi ci interessa soltanto
We
la
as
parte
Mary,
iniziale in realtà.
we as Mary are guided by the Spirit. It provides prey, shelter. The Spirit. I will hear.
La mount anche, sì, bellina. Tanta roba la mount. Mm. Beh, Asmerian Wisp, questa nuova meccanica appunto in game di Rogue Exile. Belle anche le grafiche, veramente.
I'm Jonathan Rogers, Game Director on Path of Exile 2. Welcome to GGG Live. Well, it's been a little over 3 months since we launched Early Access, so it's about time for our first major content update. Today, we're going to show you an exclusive reveal of Path of Exile 2, Dawn skill. It's finally complete, and it will be made available in the upcoming expansion. It can be found in the occult skills on the skill gem crafting panel.
Questa è tanta roba.
Raise Spectre is a skill that allows you to trap the soul of almost any monster in the game, which you can then summon in the skill panel. Spectres cost spirit and will revive automatically if they die, but the spirit cost varies based on the power of the monster. You could summon an army of weaker monsters, or a few of the more powerful monsters. You can combine them with your existing skeleton minions, or summon exclusively specters. It's all up to you and how you want to customize your army of the undead.
Infatti qui ti fa vedere e puoi fare anche appunto la build solo spettri.
It's safe to say you'll be experimenting with this one for a while. We look forward to seeing which monsters serve you best. Now let's move on to our next skill. Since we've been talking
Qui
about
ci sarà da
summoning undead so
divertirsi,
much,
sì, con gli
let's have a change of
spettri.
pace and summon something a little more
C'è
alive.
un mondo,
In Dawn of the Hunt, we're adding the Summon Rower skill.
un mondo veramente.
Summon your friendly rower to aid you in combat as a minion. You can also mount your rower in combat at any time,
Un mondo
allowing you to move at
veramente.
full speed even while shooting.
Un mondo veramente. Non so, si vedeva l'ascendancy guarda, si vedeva l'ascendancy
Will be able to join their legions by becoming undead themselves. In Dawn of the Hunt, we're introducing the Lich Ascension class. The Lich is a master of chaos and curses and could sacrifice her life to which allows you to apply an additional curse.
tutta non ce la fa a
Romantic
vedere.
Conduit skill causes you and allies in your presence to have unholy might, granting extra damage as chaos damage. Rupture the Soul makes enemies you curse explode with chaos damage when slain. Dominion over Flesh allows you to apply an additional curse. It's safe to say you'll be the true master of the occult by choosing the Lich class. So Dawn of the Hunt has the Huntress and 5 new Ascension classes, but it doesn't end there. Let's take a look at some of the new skills and curse area with arrows. Finally, Witch players will be able to join their legions by becoming undead themselves. In Dawn of the Hunt, we're introducing the Lich Ascension class. The Lich is a master of chaos and curses and could sacrifice her life to enhance her energy shield. The Crystalline Phylactery skill allows you to nominate a jewel in which to contain part of your soul, massively increasing its power. There's just one downside to spending
Anche
your soul this
questo
way
sì, a
though.
me
If you
pazzesco.
have no energy shield, your mana costs will shoot up. The Necromantic Conduit skill causes you and allies in your presence to have unholy might, granting extra damage as chaos damage. Rupture the Soul makes enemies you curse explode with chaos damage when slain. Dominion over Flesh allows you to apply an additional
Chaos
curse.
Minion Build. Holy Might, quello.
It's safe to say you'll be the true
Bisogna
master
vedere i
of the
nodi,
occult by
bisogna vedere i
choosing the
nodi,
Lich
perché non ci
class.
rilasciano tutti i nodi
So Dawn of the Hunt has the
dell'Ascendancy,
Huntress
non
and
si
5 new
può...
Ascension
Cioè
classes.
si può fare un theory crafting un po' così, ma non è che si possa premere più di tanto. Però ecco, tanta roba, diciamo che sicuramente sono andati all-in con questa nuova patch e ce ne sarà veramente delle belle da vedere. Io direi che siamo andati avanti per ormai 3 ore e 10 e possiamo anche avviarci alla conclusione. Oltre a ringraziare tutti quelli che hanno seguito e insomma che hanno preso parte a questa live, vi ricordo gli appuntamenti, quindi domani sera alle ore 9 ci sarà la live dei Dungeon Rider sul Twitch di Spike, dove andremo appunto a riprendere tutte queste tematiche e a ridiscuterle, insomma, e a riparlarne più nel dettaglio, anche perché avremo appunto più o meno 24 ore per ristudiarcele un po' di più e andare appunto a leggercele. E poi a questo punto il 4 di aprile vedremo il rilascio della patch, sperando non ci siano problematiche varie, ma direi di no, che dovrebbe essere intorno alle 20-21 ora italiana, quindi il rilascio proprio della patch sul gioco. E inoltre cercherò, appena ci saranno le patch notice o comunque al più breve possibile, di iniziare a tirare fuori la build, quindi a questo punto quasi sicuramente della Witch, Minion, e quindi Ascendancy Negromante, e andare a diritto così. Quindi grazie ancora e ci vediamo a questo punto domani sera alle ore 21.